Chapter 1304. When the two of them walked out together, Yi and Hui Lang, who were waiting outside, silently followed them. Seeing them walk towards the palace gates, she couldn't help but ask, "Don't we need to say goodbye to the monarch?" "What's there to say? There's no need." As Xianyuan Mo spoke, he didn't let go of her hand. However, after walking a distance away, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. "What's wrong?" She raised her head and asked, looking at him in surprise. Did he change his mind? Xianyuan Mo stared at her and asked, "Where's your veil?" Feng Jiu was stunned. Then he chuckled. He took out the veil and waved it in his hand. "It's here." He took it and put it on for her. "There are too many people outside. It's better to put it on." "All right, I'll listen to you," she said with a smile, holding his hand as they walked towards the palace gates. They were leaving the palace. In her eyes, his father was just a father who didn't know how to express his feelings for his son. She thought that something must have happened between them, otherwise their relationship wouldn't be so stiff. However, they were father and son. As long as it wasn't a big mistake, there would be a day when a knot in their hearts would be untied. "Your Highness, Miss Feng, please wait a moment." Not far behind them, a hurried voice sounded. The two of them stopped and turned around, seeing the palace servant that Feng Jiu was familiar with quickly running over. Gasping for breath, he bowed and presented a box with both hands. "Miss Feng, this is for you from a monarch." Feng Jiu was slightly stunned. He glanced at Xianyuan Mo's, then took the box and opened it to see a blood jade. What was different from normal blood jade was that this blood jade was filled with light, as if the light inside was about to overflow. It was very dazzling. Xianyuan Mo's took a look and his eyes moved slightly. He said to Feng Jiu, "Take it." Hearing him say, "Take it," she put it away and said to the palace servant, "Thank the monarch for us." "Yes." The eunuch replied with a smile before turning to leave. It was not until they got into the carriage that Feng Jiu took out the blood jade and looked at it again and again. "This blood jade is beautiful, but what's inside? It feels like it can move." He took the blood jade from her hand and used his fingertip to force a drop of her blood into the blood jade to recognize it as its master. He then tied it to her waist and said, "With this blood jade, other than being able to help with your cultivation, it can also automatically protect its master." Automatically protecting its master? She was slightly surprised. Is this a magic treasure? A rare magical treasure? Hearing this, she blinked and smiled. "Your imperial father is quite generous." She didn't have anything to give him. "A single blood jade was enough to buy you over?" He raised his eyebrows and glanced at her. "Hee, you can't say that." She held his arm and leaned her head on his shoulder. She smiled and narrowed her eyes, saying, "It should be said that I've subdued your imperial father." In response, Xianyuan Mo's did not say anything and only reached out to hug her tightly. When the two of them returned to the Fu, the people in the Fu saw their master walking in with a veiled woman in red. They couldn't help but sneak a peek. In the past 2 days, they had been guessing her identity. The people in the Fu had been discussing her in private and felt that it was very novel. Chapter 1305. In the following days, the two of them were practically glued to each other the entire day. When Xianyuan Mo's was handling matters, Feng Jiu would be at his side, tidying up his things, reading beside him, or lying on the soft couch to sleep. The days were warm and peaceful in the residence. Everyone was almost certain that this woman in red would be the mistress of the residence. Until, 2 months later, one day, "Master, Uncle Han is back. He's waiting for you in the study." He came in to report, and at the same time glanced at Feng Jiu discreetly. Xianyuan Mo's responded and said to Feng Jiu, "I'll be back soon." Feng Jiu was lying on the soft couch reading a book and eating grapes that Xianyuan Mo's had peeled. When she heard Xianyuan Mo's words, she responded and continued flipping through the pages of the book. He left with Xianyuan Mo's, while Hui Lang stayed behind. Looking at Feng Jiu, who was leisurely reading, he couldn't help but step forward. Master was practically brought up by Uncle Han. "Oh." She raised her head and glanced at Hui Lang. "This Uncle Han is very special." Even Master calls him Uncle Han. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. I've been in the residence for more than 2 months. Why haven't I seen him yet? Uncle Han is in charge of the Black Dungeon. That's the place where mistakes are punished and secret guards are trained. He usually doesn't leave the Black Dungeon unless there's something important. This time, he probably heard the news that the ghost doctor had come to the residence, so he came over. Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed. Looking at Hui Lang, who was slightly hesitant to speak, her heart trembled slightly, but she didn't care and continued flipping through the book. However, this time, she couldn't really focus on the book. Hui Lang opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but didn't know what to say. In the end, he just closed his mouth. On the other side in the study, Uncle Han, why are you back? Did something happen over there? After Xianyuan Mose entered the study, he saw the middle-aged man sitting at the table and asked, Aze, I heard that a woman of unknown origin came to the manor. Is there such a thing? The middle-aged man asked. He didn't address Xianyuan Mose as master or young master. Instead, he addressed him by his name as an elder would address a junior. Uncle Han, her name is Fengjiu. She's not a woman of unknown origin. He sat down at the table and said in a low voice, I've known her for a few years. She's the woman I love and will be the mistress of the house in the future. I don't want Uncle Han to have any prejudice against her. Uncle Han's face darkened. Aze, you've never had a woman by your side since you were young. You don't know much about women. Women are all vain. They only care about your status and everything you have. They don't really love you. That's enough, Uncle Han. Xianyuan Mose stood up with a dark face. Thank you for your concern, Uncle Han. If there's nothing else, you should return to the Black Dungeon as soon as possible. As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves and strode out. Uncle Han, who was sitting in the study, clenched his fists as he watched Xianyuan Mose leave in a huff. It was as if there was a ball of fire burning in his heart. His gaze darkened and a ruthless aura emanated from his body, making him look extremely terrifying. In the dark, the shadow guards didn't dare to breathe loudly when they saw this. After a while, he stood up and left the study. Only then did the shadow guards let out a sigh of relief. Chapter 1306. However, even though Master regarded Uncle Han as an elder, he would not listen to Uncle Han on this kind of matter. Moreover, in their opinion, Master and Fengjiu were a perfect match. Master, who was usually cold and emotionless, would only show his gentle side in front of Fengjiu. They had never seen this side of him before. They had been by Master's side for so long, but they rarely saw him like this. When they returned to the courtyard, Xianyuan Mose saw that the person in the courtyard seemed to be asleep with a book covering her face. He walked forward and sat down beside her. He glanced at Hui Lang. Why didn't you get a blanket to cover her? Hui Lang scratched his head. This subordinate didn't think of it just now. How about I go get it now? As he spoke, he quickly walked into the room and took out a blanket to hand to Master. Just as Xianyuan Mose was about to cover her with the blanket, he saw that the book covering her face was removed, revealing a smiling face. I'm not sleeping. Looking at that smiling face, the anger in his heart dissipated. The corner of his mouth raised slightly. If you're tired, go back to the room and sleep. It's easy to catch a cold if you sleep here. Then you'll carry me in? She stretched out her hands, directly asking him to carry her. Okay, he replied. He got up and bent down to pick her up. Holding her in his arms, he walked into the room. Seeing this, Grey Wolf let out a sigh of relief and grinned. He turned around and saw a figure standing not far away, looking at this scene with a gloomy face. The smile on Grey Wolf's face froze, and he glanced at Yi, who was beside him. Uncle Han? Why did he come here? Did he want to see the ghost doctor? You too come here. The middle-aged man, standing outside the courtyard, called out in a deep voice. Yi and Hui Lang paused for a moment, then walked out. Greetings, Uncle Han. The two of them bowed and said, That woman has been living here all this time. Yi pursed his lips and did not speak. Hui Lang smiled awkwardly. Uncle Han, her name is Fengjiu. She, just a shameless woman. You don't have to tell me her name. He snorted coldly. When he thought of the scene he just saw, his gaze became even more malicious. Uncle Han, that's the woman Master likes. I think Uncle Han shouldn't be too presumptuous. Otherwise, if Master hears it, he won't like it. He said coldly. He felt that Uncle Han was meddling too much. How dare you? Suddenly, Yi's blood started to boil. He let out a muffled groan and staggered. A mouthful of blood came out from the corner of his mouth. Uncle Han, what are you doing? Hui Lang was shocked and quickly supported Yi while glaring at him. What are you doing? Is this how you do things when you follow Master? You let some random woman get close to him. Do you know your sins? He shouted in a deep voice. His voice was like thunder in the hearts of the two men. They didn't even have a chance to speak because the other party was too strong enough to suppress them. In the courtyard, Xin Yuan Mo's face darkened when he heard the commotion outside. Feng Jiu raised an eyebrow and glanced outside. She had just laid down on the bed. She hadn't even covered herself with the quilt, and there was already a commotion outside. I'll go out and take a look. You sleep. He pulled up the quilt and covered her with it, then turned and walked out. Chapter 1307. Outside, Uncle Han, who was scolding the two, saw the door of the courtyard open. His face darkened as he looked over. His gaze went past Xin Yuan Mo's and landed on Feng Jiu, who was dressed in red. Looking at the woman's beautiful face, he was even more certain that she was a vixen. When Feng Jiu walked out, she sensed a sharp and hostile gaze staring at her and sizing her up. She raised her eyes and looked over, her gaze landing on the middle-aged man outside the courtyard. The man was dressed in black clothes, had a robust figure, and a piercingly cold aura. His entire body emanated a powerful and sharp pressure. As for his face, it was not ordinary, but it was not outstanding either. However, he had a dignified face, but at this moment, he looked a little sinister and gave people a bad feeling. Was this the Uncle Han that Hui Lang mentioned? Even if Xin Yuan Mo's was brought up by him, he was too meddlesome. He even wanted to meddle with the woman by his side. This desire to control, really opened her eyes. Even the monarch of the palace, Xin Yuan Mo's father, was not as meddlesome as him. Her first impression of this Uncle Han was very bad, and she was very displeased. If it were a relative, it would be understandable. However, he was neither a relative nor a friend. How could he meddle in her master's affairs just because of a bit of friendship? She did not know why Xin Yuan Mo's kept such a person and let him manage his black prison. However, it was obvious that this person did not know that he had crossed the line. What happened? Xin Yuan Mo's asked in a low voice. His gaze was fixed on Hui Lang and Yi, especially when he saw Yi's pale face and blood at the corner of his mouth. His face darkened. Without waiting for Yi and Hui Lang to speak, Uncle Han asked first, "Is this the Feng Jiu you were talking about?" He stared at Feng Jiu with a sharp and sinister gaze. She is really capable. Uncle Han. Xin Yuan Mo's looked at him and frowned. I told you to stay out of this. Aze, this demoness must know some kind of seduction technique. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to charm you like this. You can't keep such a person by your side. If you really want a woman, Uncle Han can help you find one. There are many who are prettier than her. Hearing this, Feng Jiu burst out laughing. She slowly stepped forward and came to Xin Yuan Mo's side. She held his arm with both hands and leaned against him. Her beautiful face bloomed with an enchanting smile. Mose, who is this old man? Hearing this, Hui Lang's Yi couldn't help but twitch the corners of their mouths. They glanced at Uncle Han, whose face was ashen, and tactfully retreated to the side. Old man, only the ghost doctor would dare to tease people like this. But then again, with the ghost doctor's personality, it would be strange if she still respectfully called out to Uncle Han after Uncle Han insulted her time and time again. His name is Han Rong. We all call him Uncle Han. Xin Yuan Mo's said simply. Oh, his surname is Han? I thought his surname was Xin Yuan. She said carelessly. She glanced at the middle-aged man who was clenching his fists in anger. Since he's an outsider, then he's naturally not your relative. If he's not your relative, then he's a servant. How can a servant care about your business? You impudent! Han Rong shouted angrily. But who knew? You're the impudent one. Chapter 1308. She let go of Xin Yuan Mo's arm and stepped forward, fearlessly standing in front of Han Rong. Her eyes were as cold as frost, and with a frightening aura, she berated. "You're just a servant. Who gave you the right to be so presumptuous in front of your master? You're just an outsider. What right do you have to speak here?" Han Rong was so angry that his face was ashen. His chest heaved up and down violently, and his entire body was filled with hostility. He looked like he couldn't wait to kill Fengjiu. There was no doubt that if Xin Yuan Mo's wasn't standing there, he would have attacked already. Fengjiu sneered. "I'm just an outsider? Huh? How can I be more than a servant like you?" I watched Aze grow up. He angrily clenched his fists and shouted. "So what if you watch him grow up? Did you give birth to him? Or did you raise him? Watch him grow up? Can you not differentiate between seniority and inferiority just because you watch him grow up? Can't differentiate between master and servant? Or are you trying to force me to repay your kindness?" She stepped closer and closer, her words aggressive. Han Rong's face turned from green to black, and then to red. She opened her mouth, but couldn't say a word. She could only stare at Fengjiu with a pair of angry eyes, as if she wanted to drink her blood and eat her flesh. Xin Yuan Mo's, who originally didn't look very good, heard Fengjiu's words, and his face softened. His eyes flashed with a trace of a smile and doting. He didn't say anything and let her handle it. In the future, she would be the mistress of this house. Although because of her relationship with him, the people in the house would acknowledge her, but it was hard to say if they would really obey her. She must have the ability and courage to handle things. Originally, he was thinking of how to find an opportunity for her. Now that Han Rong had personally delivered herself to his door, who else was more suitable than him to be the one to punish the chicken to warn the monkey? Using Han Rong, who was in charge of the Black Prison, as an example, who in this house would dare to not obey her? "Aze, you're just going to let this demoness humiliate Uncle Han like this?" He couldn't take it anymore and looked at the indifferent Xin Yuan Mo's. "What I see is only you humiliating her, not the other way around." Xin Yuan Mo's eyes darkened. He glanced at him expressionlessly and coldly said, "Perhaps you should pay more attention to the rules of the Fu." Han Rong's heart sank when she heard him refer to himself as this lord. She knew that he wouldn't listen to anything she said now. If she mentioned it again, it would only make things more troublesome. At that moment, he took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He tried his best to make himself look as calm as possible. Then, he said, "I understand. I'll take my leave first." As he said that, he cupped his hands and bowed. Without waiting for them to say anything, he turned around and left. Xin Yuan Mo's stared at his back and frowned. No one knew what he was thinking. Fengjiu raised his eyebrows in surprise. That's it. She thought that he wouldn't be able to control himself and would make a move. It seemed that this person's endurance was really not ordinary. He could even suppress this kind of thing. Thinking about it from another angle, a strong person who was originally respected in this house could only suppress his anger and leave after being suddenly admonished. How much endurance did he have to be able to do that? Moreover, the person who admonished him was her. Even if Xin Yuan Mo's said that she would be the mistress of this house, she wouldn't be the mistress of this house until she married him. However, he endured her admonishment and left. With this kind of endurance, how could anyone look down on him? What are you thinking about? Chapter 1309. I'm thinking, why did you keep such a person by your side? Why did you entrust him with such an important task? Based on his character, this was not right. Hearing this, Xin Yuan Mo's expression changed slightly. He looked in the direction that Han Rong left and said, "He was never like this before." On the side, Grey Wolf supported Ing Yi and stepped forward, quickly saying, "Yes, he really wasn't like this in the past. In the past, he was wholeheartedly thinking about Master in the house. He never did anything out of line. Today, he went too far. It really surprised people." Fengjiu was deep in thought. Never like this before? Just because of her? Could it be that she really had a bad first impression of him? So she misunderstood that he was a scheming person? Hui Lang, helping Yi to get treated. Xin Yuan Mo said, "Yes." After replying, he left with Ing Yi first. Xin Yuan Mose held her hand and said, "There are many people in the manor, and many of them are stronger than you. They will acknowledge you because of your relationship with me, but whether they accept you or not, it's up to you to decide in the future." Speaking of this, he smiled and said, "You handled today's matter well. You should be ruthless and don't have any scruples." Hearing this, she sighed and frowned with a look of disdain. "I haven't married you, and you're already so troublesome. I have to reconsider whether I want to marry you or not." Saying this, she pulled her hand back and turned to walk into the courtyard. Xin Yuan Mose was startled and stunned for a moment. He chased after her anxiously. "You promised me. You can't go back on your words." She looked at the sky and thought for a moment. Then, she pursed her lips and refused to admit it. "Did I? When did I promise you? Why don't I remember? You must have remembered wrongly." "Fengjiu, I'm here." She smiled slyly. "You know that I hate troublesome matters. Moreover, I'm not as strong as the people in your manor. If someone bullies me in the future, I won't be able to beat them. So after thinking about it, I'll forget about it. I'll protect you with me here," he said seriously. "Moreover, my people won't offend their superiors." Hearing this, she waved her index finger in front of him. "Don't say it's so early. It's hard to say. Moreover, I heard that men are different before and after marriage. I'm starting to worry. I'm only 17 or 18 years old, in the prime of my youth. There's still a lot of time. I can't get married so easily. You're not young anymore." As he spoke, he glanced at her chest. The place that should be big has also grown. Hearing this, Fengjiu rolled her eyes and snorted. "Where are you looking at? What are you looking at? Xiaojiu, how about this? Let's pick an auspicious day, and I'll send the betrothal gifts first. How about it? Nothing much. I have to reconsider. What's more, there's still a 10-year agreement between you and me." She snorted. Looking at his anxious expression, she found it somewhat funny. Thinking about it, "I've been here for a few months. I'll probably be leaving in a few days." She looked at him and said, "After I leave, you don't have to specifically ask about me. When it's time to appear, I'll appear." Hearing this, his brows furrowed. "Are you planning to hide? Actually, if you have anything to do, you can tell me. I'll help you solve it." Chapter 13:10. A woman who relies on a man too much will become nothing in the end. She doesn't like to rely on others. She wants to be able to make her own decisions and deal with her own problems. Even if she is in the 8 great empires, she hopes that one day her power will spread to this side. Her people will spread to every corner of the 8 great empires. She only needs to give the order, and all the heroes will rush over. Thinking of this, her eyes flashed. She feels that this will come true. She wants to have this kind of power, not to dominate the world or anything. She just wants to have enough power to protect people who want to hurt her country and her family. A man wants to become strong and dominate the world to become a Jizun cultivator. A woman wants to become strong and become a Jizun cultivator. She wants to become strong and become a Jizun cultivator. She wants to have great power, but it is only to have the power to protect the people she wants to protect. To a woman, dominating the world is not very attractive. Even for her, her life goal is not that. Therefore, when she heard Mo Chun say that she will become the ruler of the world, she only laughed it off. That is impossible because she only wants to live a simple life. She wants to have enough power to protect the people she wants to protect. She wants to live with the people she likes, have a few children, watch the children grow up, watch the clouds move by, watch the sunset and the rosy clouds rise and fall together. Xin Yuan Mose saw the determination in her eyes and didn't say anything more. He only said helplessly, "All right, if there is anything you can't solve, you can help me. Also, when you leave this place, where are you going?" She should at least let him know, right? Otherwise, how am I going to find her? Hearing this, she looked up at him and laughed softly. "I'm not telling you." With that, the red figure quickly ran away. Looking at her figure running into the room, he shook his head and sighed. It is said that only women and villains are difficult to deal with. He finally experienced this today. Especially, from the first time he met her, he knew that this woman was as cunning as a fox. Her temperament was even better than most women. Even he had suffered many losses at her hands. However, this time, she seemed to be more well-behaved. She only stayed by his side all day and didn't think of any other tricks. He thought that she had changed, so she was waiting for him here. On the other side, Han Rong, who had returned to her room, was so angry that she smashed the table. When she thought of the previous scene, she felt a fire burning in her heart. The fire was getting bigger and bigger, and she could not suppress her anger. Demoness. She wanted to be the mistress of the mansion. Han Rong, will not let you do as you wish. He clenched his fists, the veins on the back of his hands bulging. The news of Feng Jiu scolding Han Rong spread quickly in the mansion. Some people were shocked. After all, Han Rong's status in the mansion was not low. Even the master usually called him Uncle Han. Feng Jiu dared to scold him in front of the master. More importantly, master didn't stop him. For a moment, they thought in their hearts and couldn't help but reevaluate Feng Jiu's position in their master's heart and in the manor. The days seemed to pass peacefully as usual. However, a few days later, when Han Rong brought 4 beautiful and voluptuous women to the main courtyard, many people were slightly surprised. Chapter 13:11. Ying Yi and Hui Lang, who were standing guard outside the main courtyard, saw him come in with 4 women. They couldn't help but look at each other. One of them blocked the entrance while the other went in to report. Because the door wasn't closed, Hui Lang went in directly. He poked his head inside, but didn't see Feng Jiu's figure. He hurriedly lowered his voice and said, "Master, Uncle Han brought 4 women here. They're all like this." He even twisted his body and drew a line in front of his chest with his hands, showing off their exquisite and voluptuous figures. Xianyuan Mose's face darkened. He glanced at him and then looked at Feng Jiu, who appeared behind Hui Lang. Seeing that his master's gaze was looking behind him, Grey Wolf felt a chill run down his spine and hurriedly turned around. When he saw the red figure standing there, he couldn't help but smile in embarrassment. Ghost doctor. Hui Lang, you're quite good at drawing. Your waist is also quite soft. I didn't know you had such potential. Feng Jiu said with a smile that wasn't a smile. Haha, actually I just came in to report. That I'll leave first. He smiled stiffly and left. Beauties, there are 4 of them, and they're all voluptuous. Aren't you going to take a look? She glanced at the man sitting at the table. I'll just send them away. He didn't want to go out at all. He knew that this woman's jealousy was very strong. If he really dared to leave this woman by his side, she could pack up and leave at any time. He didn't dare to take this risk. He reached out to pull her, but saw that she avoided him. She glanced outside and said, "How can that be? Delicate and voluptuous beauties. Even if you don't want to take a look, I want to take a look. What's more, it's your Uncle Han's good intentions, right?" As soon as she finished speaking, she really walked out. Seeing this, he helplessly sighed and could only follow. Uncle Han, without master's permission, you can't enter. You should know. Ying Yi's face was cold and expressionless as he spoke. He blocked the entrance to the courtyard, not allowing him to take a step forward. Han Rong's face was gloomy. She glanced at Ying Yi and didn't say anything, because the people in the room had already come out. What are you doing? Xianyuan Mose's voice was low and cold. Aze, Uncle Han knows that he went overboard that day, so he's here today to apologize to Miss Feng. He said to Xianyuan Mose, then looked at Feng Jiu. His eyes moved slightly as he said, Miss Feng, this Han has specially come today to apologize. I know that Miss Feng has been in the manor for so long and doesn't even have a servant girl to serve you. So I specially picked a few people to serve Miss Feng. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and shouted at the women beside him, Why aren't you coming forward to greet Miss Feng? This servant greets Miss Feng. The 4 of them curtsied and bowed. Their voices were gentle and flirtatious. When they bent over, their breasts were faintly discernible. When they raised their eyes again, their eyes were like limpid autumn water, charming like silk. It was very moving. Hui Lang was speechless. It couldn't be right. These 4 delicate and voluptuous beauties were prepared for the ghost doctor. If they were given to the ghost doctor, a woman like her wouldn't be able to enjoy them. He originally thought that they were here to give to master. but was also true. This Han Rong knew that Master wouldn't accept them, so he said that he was here to apologize. However, this apology was fake, and the real purpose was to give them away, right? Chapter 13:12. Xin Yuan Mose furrowed his brows and looked at Feng Jiu. When he saw her glowing eyes staring at the four women, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch, and he looked away, speechless. Are you really giving me these plump beauties? She stepped forward and touched one of the hands. They're so smooth. What are you applying? The beauty whose hand was touched by her stiffened and didn't dare to withdraw her hand. She could only brace herself and say softly, Miss Feng, this servant uses pearl cream on my hands. Oh, so you use pearls. No wonder they're so smooth. She nodded and let go of the woman's hand. She lifted the woman's chin and said, their looks are quite pleasing to the eye. Their skin is so white. I'm envious. Ying Yi and Hui Lang lowered their heads and hid the smile in their eyes. Han Rong frowned slightly and was a little surprised. He thought she would be angry, but who knew she would flirt with the women in front of them? Was this demoness really a woman? Are you really giving these beauties to me? Feng Jiu turned around and asked Han Rong. Take them back. They're an eyesore. Before Han Rong could say anything, Xin Yuan Mose couldn't take it anymore. His woman didn't flirt with him and went to flirt with the other women. If they really stayed, what would happen in the future? Seeing this, Han Rong smiled. Aze, Miss Feng also needs someone to take care of her. He looked at Feng Jiu. Are you satisfied with these people? Satisfied, of course I'm satisfied. But since you're giving them to me, then they're my people, right? What if I accidentally kill them? You won't make trouble for me, right? She smiled innocently and looked at Han Rong. Hearing this, Han Rong's heart moved and he looked at her. Haha, of course not. Since I'm giving them to Miss Feng, they're naturally Miss Feng's people. Whether they live or die has nothing to do with me. But I think, since I'm giving them to Miss Feng as an apology, Miss Feng won't let them die so easily. Of course, she replied with a smile. If these people dared to have any thoughts that they shouldn't have, she wouldn't let them die. At most, she would make them wish they were dead. Since that's the case, I'll take my leave first. As he spoke, he glanced at Xin Yuan Mose before turning to leave with a smile. Why did you keep them here? Xin Yuan Mose asked. She could have rejected him, but she chose to let him stay. She glanced at him. Her eyes narrowed into slits as she smiled and said, Of course. Otherwise, the days would be too boring, wouldn't they? As soon as she finished speaking, she looked at the four beauties in front of her and asked, What are your names? However, just as they were about to say their names, Feng Jiu waved his hand and said, Let's call the four of you spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Don't come to the main courtyard unless I tell you otherwise. Yes, the four of them replied, not daring to refute. Hui Lang, if there's anything you need them to do, I'll leave it to you, she said as she looked at Hui Lang. Me? He paused and looked at the four women. He scratched his head and thought for a moment before saying, All right then, you guys go and fetch water first. Fill up all the water tanks in the backyard. Yes. The four of them replied and bowed before heading to the back. Chapter 13:13. I remember that the water in the back courtyard is from the spring water in the back mountain. Furthermore, the bucket seems to have a sharp bottom. Feng Jiu raised an eyebrow at Hui Lang. That's right. It's the spring water from the back mountain. It'll probably take a full day to carry the water. Ghost Doctor, I'm helping you send them away, so that they won't be an eyesore in front of you and Master. She chuckled. How can they be an eyesore? Those four beauties with voluptuous figures swaying in front of my eyes like delicate flowers are a feast for the eyes. But Master thinks that they're an eyesore. Master only has eyes for you. With you around, no matter how beautiful the women are, they won't be able to enter Master's eyes. He said fawningly. Hearing this, Xin Yuan Mose curled his lips and glanced at Hui Lang before reaching out to hug Feng Jiu. Do you want to go out for a walk today? I'll accompany you. No, I plan to stay here and enjoy the carefree days of being waited upon. She turned and walked inside, lying down on the soft couch. She said to Hui Lang, let two people carry the water. Call 2 more back to massage my feet and serve me closely. Hearing this, Huilang glanced at Master and said, Okay. He rushed to the back courtyard and called the 2 women back. Where did Han Rong call you from? Fengjiu rested her head on her hands and looked at the 2 women kneeling to massage her legs. Replying to young miss, we were transferred out from the beauty pavilion. The 2 of them replied in unison. Oh, there's a beauty pavilion here? She glanced at Xin Yuan Mose and asked with a faint smile, You've never been there before? No, Xin Yuan Mose said. Seeing her squinting comfortably and being served by 2 women, he said, I'll go to the study to take care of some matters. I'll be back later. Seeing him leave, Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and glanced at Huilang. Is your master running away? Haha, how could that be? Huilang smiled embarrassedly and retreated outside. Fengjiu snorted and stopped talking. He closed his eyes and went to sleep. At this time, when the 2 women saw that she had fallen asleep, they quietly sized her up. Today, when they came over, they all lowered their heads and did not dare to look at her directly. Now that they saw her, they could not help but be surprised by her beauty. Even among the hundreds of beauties in the beauty pavilion, none of them could compare to her. It was no wonder that the Yama Lord took a liking to her. They had heard that their master, who had never been close to women, doted on a red-clothed woman very much and treated her as a treasure in his palm. Seeing her today, they couldn't help but envy and yearn for her. If they could also obtain master's pity, how good would that be? Thinking of this and what Han Rong said, the 2 women looked at each other and couldn't help but lower their gazes and gently massage her legs at night. The sky was filled with stars and the courtyard was quiet. After returning to the main courtyard to have dinner with Fengjiu, Xin Yuan Mose returned to the study to take care of unfinished business. He was busy until late at night. Fengjiu was already lying on the bed resting. At this time, a woman came to the study with ginseng tea. However, before she could enter, she was stopped by Ying Yi. Go back. Ying Yi lowered his voice and said coldly. Chapter 13-14. Hearing this, Ying Yi glanced at the woman and guessed Fengjiu's intention. Thus, he pushed open the door and said, Go in. Thank you, guarding. The woman was delighted. She gently bowed and walked inside with the ginseng tea. After the woman entered, Ying Yi glanced at the roof and stood guard outside the door as if he didn't know anything. At this time, on the roof of the study, a red figure was squatting there, looking down with interest through the small skylight. Compared to her leisure, Xin Yuan Mose's face was dark. Thinking of what the woman who came in through the window said to him, he felt a headache coming on. What did she say? She wanted him to cooperate with her. She wanted to see if she could make a move on those women, so as not to hurt the innocent. He didn't know if he should be happy that she trusted him or angry that she used him to test those women. Master, this servant has brought the ginseng tea. A coquettish voice rang out, causing Fengjiu, who was on the roof, to tremble and her eyes to shine. This voice was much more coquettish than talking to her. Did she really want her man? Ha ha ha, she had guts. Then don't blame her for being impolite. She glanced downstairs and saw Xin Yuan Mose sitting upright and closing the things on the table. When she saw the unconcealable joy on the woman's face, she couldn't help but chuckle softly. When the sound reached the study downstairs, the woman was shocked and her face instantly paled. She hurriedly looked up and saw the red figure sitting by the little skylight above. Ah! She cried out in alarm and her legs went soft. She was about to throw herself at Xin Yuan Mose when she was pushed away by a force and flew out of the study. The night is good. Handsome man, do you want to come up and admire the moon? She sat cross-legged and touched her chin with one hand. She looked down at Xin Yuan Mose with a smile. Actually, I won't be jealous if you take advantage of that woman. Just don't let others take advantage of you. Hearing the first sentence, Xin Yuan Mose's lips revealed a smile. He thought that this little woman finally understood and knew to invite him to admire the moon. Who knew that the next sentence would directly cut off his thoughts? Sure enough, she was still so unreliable. He walked out of the study with his hands behind his back and glanced at the woman who had fainted from fright. He had Ying Yi send someone to take her away. Then he tiptoed and jumped onto the roof of the study and slowly walked towards a red figure. Fengjiu blinked her eyes and admired the black figure walking under the moonlight. Looking at the godlike handsome figure exuding the charm of a mature man, she couldn't help but narrow her eyes. She felt that her taste in men was really good. Such an outstanding man. She directly hugged his thigh. As for the crafty and quick-witted Fengjiu, she sat leisurely on the roof. She rested her chin on her hand and looked at him with a smile. In Xianyuan Moses' eyes, she was like a seductive spirit under the night sky, seductive and captivating. Handsome man smile. The teasing words came with a smile, breaking the romantic and mysterious atmosphere. Xianyuan Mose, who heard her words, couldn't help but smile helplessly. Such a good atmosphere. Can't you say something normal? Chapter 13:15. For example, you can express your love from me to me. He revealed a smile and sat down beside her. He reached out his hand and naturally pulled her into his embrace. Who knew that he would be greeted by her elbow? And, he groaned, you're murdering your own husband. Does it hurt? I'm sorry, I definitely didn't do it on purpose. I'll help you rub it, she said with a smile, and reached out her hand to rub his chest. A pair of small hands rubbed his chest. Xianyuan Mose only felt his breathing quicken and a fire in his body. He immediately grabbed her hand and gritted his teeth as he said, "Don't light the fire." Light the fire? No, I didn't light the fire. She glanced at him and saw that his face was a bit uncomfortable and his body was slightly stiff. She couldn't help but curiously blink her eyes. She looked up and down and was a bit stunned. Your self-control is like this? Xianyuan Mose only felt the fire in his body burning even more fiercely, especially when this woman actually glanced at his lower body in front of him. That gaze was like a fuse, making him almost unable to hold it in. However, a certain person didn't know it and actually continued to tease him. Your body seems to be a bit stiff? Could it be that you're too tired? How about I help you massage your shoulders? And just like that, Fengjiu quickly stood up and excitedly came to his side to massage his shoulders. Relax, relax, don't always tense your body. When he heard that, Xianyuan Mose let her be. After taking a deep breath, he calmed the fire in his body and gradually relaxed his body. He felt that pair of small hands pressing on his shoulders. Time and time again, the strength was neither light nor heavy. It was gentle and slow, and it was very comfortable. Yes, just like that. Relax is right. She smiled and narrowed her eyes, a trace of slyness flashing through her eyes. She first loosened his shoulders and then massaged his temples. It was only because of her that he could be so assured to give himself to her and let her massage him at will. If it was anyone else, he would never give his back to someone he didn't trust, let alone a fatal head. How is it? Is it comfortable? She asked with a smile. Yes, it's comfortable. Not only was it comfortable, but he also felt that all his fatigue had disappeared. The night breeze was cool, and he had the company of someone he cared about. She was also helping him massage. This feeling made him feel comfortable both physically and mentally. That's right. This is a special finger technique. There are acupuncture points. I can't just press them randomly. She chuckled and pressed from his head up to his neck. She pressed a little, all the way down to his back and to his waist. She only felt that when her hand pressed down on his waist, his body stiffened. His originally half-closed eyes also opened, and a ball of fire leaped up in his eyes once again. You have to massage your waist if you sit for too long. Otherwise, it will be sore in the future. As soon as she finished speaking, he hugged her from behind and carried her to the front. She lay on his lap. She blinked and looked at him. She noticed that his gaze was getting darker and darker. He stared intently at her red lips. His throat moved up and down, and his face gradually lowered. Seeing this, she reached out to hold his face and looked at him attentively and seriously. Under his expectant gaze, her red lips parted slightly, and her voice came out with a trace of a smile. Chapter 13:16. Xianyuan Moses' lips twitched when he heard those words that spoiled the mood. His entire body froze on the spot as he stared speechlessly at the silhouette that instantly leapt up from his lap, giggling as she quickly ran off. Seeing the red figure disappear into the night with a few leaps, only her clear and melodious laughter could be heard in the wind. He couldn't help but let out a heavy breath. This woman, she was the one who flirted, and she was the one who ruined the mood. What was he supposed to do with this annoying little vixen? He sat on the rooftop, enjoying the night breeze. Even the cool night breeze couldn't suppress the heat in his body. He was a man. If he was teased again and again, he would suffer internal injuries. On the other side, Fengjiu had already returned to her room in the courtyard. After closing the door and windows, she hid under the blanket and laughed. All right, she admitted that she had done it on purpose. She had only wanted to test his self-control. Who knew that he would have no self-control? When she thought of his expectant gaze and the way he froze in place, she couldn't help but laugh. As for Xinyuan Mose, who had returned to the courtyard, he glanced at her room and shook his head. He went into his room and ordered someone to prepare some water for him to soak in. The next day, the tranquility of the morning was shattered by a piercing scream. The scream traveled from the rear courtyard to the front of the main courtyard, startling everyone in the front and rear courtyard awake. Of course, there was one exception, Fengjiu, who was sleeping with a blanket over her head. She acted as if she hadn't heard the scream. She turned around and pulled the blanket over her head. She didn't even try to find out what was going on. She didn't need to be curious to know what was going on. After all, it was her doing. Of the 4 women, 2 were keeping watch in the outer room of Fengjiu's room. They were there to wait on Fengjiu to see if she needed water. As for the other 2, besides the one who had been brought back last night, the other was also in the rear courtyard. When the piercing scream pierced the sky, the 2 women in Fengjiu's room saw that Fengjiu wasn't moving. They walked out quietly and were about to go to the back to see what was going on when they saw Xia rushing over. Oh no, oh no, oh no. I don't know what happened to Dong. When she woke up this morning, she gasped for breath, her face full of shock. What happened to her? They knew. Last night, when Miss asked them who was going to deliver the ginseng soup to their master, they were hesitant. Dong was the only one who stepped forward. However, she was carried back. Her injuries weren't serious, but they weren't light either. I become fatter. When she woke? When they heard this, Spring and Autumn were shocked. They looked at each other. Chun'er said, "Go and take a look. Miss hasn't woken up yet. It's better if I stay here." "All right, I'll be back soon," Xiao said. She followed Xia to the rear courtyard. As she walked, she was shocked. How could she gain weight overnight for no reason? Furthermore, she was in the residence. If that was true, then it could be. When she thought of this, she couldn't help but shiver. Chapter 13:17. The person crying on the bed lifted her head. Her face was so swollen that it looked like someone had blown air into it. The 2 of them gasped in shock as they covered their mouths and took a step back. I don't know what happened. I woke up like this in the morning. Dong cried on the bed as she pulled up her pants to cover her head. She was too ashamed to face anyone. After she calmed down, Chun'er's gaze flickered. Don't cry. It's probably just a little swollen. It's fine as long as there's no other problem. When Miss wakes up, I'll tell her about your situation. The 2 of them comforted her. After a while, they left and went to the front. After speaking to Chiu for a while, the 3 of them looked at each other and found Hui Lang. Captain Dong. The 2 of them told Hui Lang about what happened in the backyard. Hui Lang's face twitched when he heard this. He said, "You could talk to Miss about this when she wakes up." With that, he flashed out. What a joke. It was obvious that the ghost doctor was behind this. Asking him to deal with it? Forget about it. When the 3 of them saw this, they didn't dare to say anything. They quietly guarded the room and waited for Fengjiu to wake up. Fengjiu finally woke up at about the end of the morning. After she washed up, she walked out of the room. The 3 of them looked at each other and tried to push each other to get the person beside them to speak. In the end, it was Xiu who carefully reported, "Miss, I don't know what happened to Dong. She's gained 2 rounds of weight overnight." "Oh, is that so?" It's fine. I know medicine. I'll take a look at her later. As she spoke, she glanced at the other room in the courtyard. Is the person over there not awake yet? He left early. Chunner said. Oh. Fengjiu nodded. Then what are you waiting for? Did you forget that you're here to serve me? Go to the kitchen and see what's there. Bring some over for me. Yes. The three of them hurriedly went to prepare the food for her. After Fengjiu ate her fill, Xianyuan Mose didn't return. Therefore, she said, Let's go. Let's go and see her. Thus, the three of them followed behind her and headed to the backyard with apprehension. Looking at the fat man, Fengjiu couldn't help but sigh. The effect of the medicine was really strong. She had only casually stuffed a strange pill in her mouth, but she had grown fat overnight. It was as if she had blown air into a rubber ball. It was inconceivable. How do you feel? Other than being fat, are there any other discomforts in your body? She took out a small notebook and asked as she jotted it down. This was a book that recorded the effects of those strange pills. No, young miss, please save me. Donger cried and begged. It's fine. Wait a moment. I'll find a pill for you. Fengjiu waved his hand and took out a dark red pill. Dong hesitated as she looked at the dark red pill. She was a little uneasy as she looked at Fengjiu. She didn't dare to eat it. That pill didn't look like an ordinary pill. Would there be any problems if she ate it? However, just as she opened her mouth, a stream of air hit her and hit the acupuncture point on her chest. She cried out. At the same time, Fengjiu flicked the pill into her mouth. You should be glad that you have the chance to taste my pill. She clapped her hands and looked at Dong, who had swallowed the pill. Wait a moment. Tell me if there are any symptoms. Chapter 13:18. Was it because they approached him with ulterior motives that they ended up as test subjects? No, that wasn't it. She didn't directly use the medicine on the four of them. She only used it after Dong, gave them the ginseng soup. As they thought of this, the other three lowered their heads nervously. At this moment, Dong's face turned pale as she thought of the same thing. She suddenly cried out in pain, and her entire body rolled on the ground as she spun around. Her painful cries continued to come out of her mouth. Her originally fat body was visibly slimming down at this moment. However, she was still slimming down. Her hands and feet were on the ground, and she was squatting like a wild beast. She cried out, and her fat body was actually squatting and jumping on the ground like an animal. Following this, her face started to change. She turned from a human to a cat and a tiger. The most unbelievable thing was that a strange tail grew out of her back. Chun, Xia, and Xiu were shocked by this scene. They covered their mouths and exclaimed as they retreated to one side. Oh, so that's a beast pill? Fengjiu looked at the tail that grew out of her body. He was very curious as to how this tail grew out. As she watched, she wrote down the changes that happened to Dong, after she ate the beast pill. However, at this moment, Dong, who was almost like a wild beast, suddenly turned her head. Her bloodthirsty eyes stared at Fengjiu, who was sitting by the table and writing something. She suddenly leaped forward and pounced over. Her sharp claws, which had evolved from her mutation, were filled with a murderous aura as they clawed at Fengjiu's neck. Hiss! No! The three girls gasped. When they saw that she was attacking Fengjiu, they couldn't help but exclaim. They wanted to stop her, but because they had retreated to one side, and because Dong pounced forward at an extremely fast speed, they could only watch helplessly for a moment. However, when they saw that Fengjiu, who was writing something in the small book, lifted his eyes and swept his sleeve, a powerful air current that could be seen with the naked eye surged out and sent Dong flying. The three of them were even more shocked. The four of them had come from the beauty's house. Apart from their stunning looks, their abilities had already reached the Aurus Core stage. However, Donger, who was also a Aurus Core stage cultivator, was sent flying by the nonchalant Phoenix Nine. Just how strong was she? Could it be that her strength was above the four of them? As they thought of this scene and looked at Dong, the three of them were shocked. If they did what Haunt, would they end up like Dong, and become pill testers? Suddenly, they remembered what she and Han Rong had said. She said that she wouldn't let them die so easily. So, this was what she meant. Ayo, Dong, or howled like a wild beast as she crashed to the ground. Just as she was about to get up and pounce forward again, she was suppressed by Feng Jiu's aura and was unable to get up. She walked forward and curiously felt her pulse. Then, she touched the strange tail that grew out of her back. As she touched the tail, she muttered to herself, "How did you grow a tail?" It actually became a beast pill. That's weird. Just as she was thinking, she heard a thunderous roar from outside. "Witch, come out. Is this your doing?" Chapter 13:19. A loud fart sound rang out, causing the hidden guards to be stunned. They looked strangely at Han Rong, who looked as if she wanted to kill someone. Feng Jiu walked out from the backyard, followed by the 3 servant girls. Perhaps they were shocked by Dong or his current appearance, but they all lowered their heads and respectfully followed 3 steps behind Feng Jiu. They put away their flirtatious looks and replaced them with humility and respect. "What's going on now?" Feng Jiu glanced at the furious and embarrassed Han Rong, wrinkling his brows and covering his nose. "You're too rude." As soon as Feng Jiu's voice fell, he heard Han Rong farting again. Instantly, his entire face turned red. He had never been so embarrassed before. He only felt that the prestige he had built up over the years had been destroyed because of this uncontrollable fart. "Witch, it's you, isn't it? When did you take the opportunity to attack me? How dare you?" His face was red as he glared at her. "Take out the antidote." The frightening aura that came from the fierce and furious voice was destroyed by the sound of another fart. In the shadows, the hidden guards were stunned. In the courtyard, Feng Jiu covered his nose and took a few steps back, staring coldly at him. "Witch, huh? How dare you? Take out the antidote. Otherwise, I'll kill you." Just as his fierce voice sounded, the furious Han Rong sucked in his palm, and a wave of spiritual energy surged in his palm. In the next moment, his figure suddenly shot out, rushing towards Feng Jiu. His speed and the ferocity of his attack made people's hearts jump. Whether it was Chun, Xia, or Qiu, or the hidden guards, they all saw that Han Rong wanted to take Feng Jiu's life. The hidden guards saw that the situation was not good and quickly went to report to their masters. At this moment, Hui Lang, who had just returned from a walk, saw the 2 people fighting in front of the courtyard and quickly ran forward to shout, "Han Rong, what are you doing? Is that someone you can touch? Stop it now." A dark light flashed in Han Rong's eyes. Since she had made a move, she had to kill this demoness before Ah Zhe arrived. He would never let this demoness live by Ah Zhe's side. Powerful airflow and pressure rushed out. Feng Jiu, who was standing there, narrowed his eyes. Apart from the time in the forest of death when he felt the pressure and airflow stronger than the nascent soul stage, this was the second time he felt it. This was the level above the nascent soul realm, which was the true power of the fairy realm. The pressure and airflow were powerful enough to destroy everything, especially the wind blades that were flying towards her. They were so strong that her cheeks hurt. If she didn't have the protection of the ancient pressure, she wouldn't even be able to make a move against such an expert. With a move of her hand, the red silk around her waist wrapped around her hand. The red silk, which had been infused with spiritual energy, instantly turned from a belt into an offensive weapon. With a whoosh, it flew out and met the attack that was coming towards her. Above the red silk, there was a sharp aura of spiritual force that formed a blade of qi. The 2 figures moved together, and there was only the sound of qi being refracted. As the 2 of them exchanged blows, the powerful pressure caused the blood in the hearts of some of the shadow guards to churn. Blood flowed out from the corners of their mouths, not to mention the 3 maids. They wanted to go down and help. Chapter 13:20. Bang! After Han Rong dodged the attack of the red silk, he flipped his palm and condensed a sharp ice blade in his palm, attacking Feng Jiu. When Feng Jiu saw this, she immediately used her red silk to block it. The ice blade, which was as thick as a finger and had a sharp tip, landed on her red silk. When it was wrapped by her red silk, A flame surged and instantly melted the ice blade into water droplets that fell to the ground. Demonis. So you're practicing a fire-based technique. Seeing this, Han Rong's eyes flashed, and he spoke in a gloomy voice. Just as he finished speaking, the sound of a fart was heard. This loud fart sound was extremely clear and strange. At the same time, it was like oil had been poured on Han Rong's heart, making him go crazy and want to kill Fengjiu. When Fengjiu changed from defense to offense, he gathered his hands together, and the air in the air was instantly controlled by him. It condensed and enveloped her. The pressure of a fairy realm expert in the air enveloped her, and the air current rose several feet high. It was as if MT Tai was pressing down on her, and it was very aggressive. He wanted to take her life in one blow, so he poured all of his energy into this blow. In an instant, the sky changed color and the wind and clouds surged. In the sky, dark clouds filled the sky and thunder rumbled. The sand on the ground was swept up. In a few breaths' time, in the dark clouds in the sky, a strong spiritual energy sucked up the sand on the ground and condensed it into a giant sand dragon. Vaguely, the giant sand dragon was like a whirlwind, and the dragon's tail was swaying below. It became bigger and stronger. Hiss! What's that? Heavens! Isn't that the crown prince's residence? Why is there a sand dragon stirring in the sky? Look, the sky above the residence has changed color. Is this a fight between two experts? Hiss! Who dares to fight in the crown prince's residence with no regard for their lives? They even condensed such a powerful sand dragon. Are they trying to kill someone? The scene in the sky above the crown prince's palace shocked everyone in the city. Some families even thought that something big had happened and sent people to investigate. Even in the palace, the monarch furrowed his brows when he heard about this. He ordered people to find out what was going on. And in the study of the manor, Xianyuan Mose had rushed to the main courtyard after hearing the report from the Shadow Guard. Halfway there, he was also shocked by the powerful and frightening dragon of flying sand in the sky. Damn Han Rong! His face instantly turned ashen. His deep black eyes contained a monstrous fury as he flew towards the main courtyard. There was a trace of fear in his heart. If she was injured in his residence, how could he forgive himself? Han Rong, if he dared to hurt him, he would definitely not let him off. Fengjiu's hands froze as he looked at the flying sand dragon stirring in the sky with some shock. It turned out that such a strong pressure and airflow was really frightening. It turned out that when a fairy realm expert attacked, if he wanted to kill someone, he would have such a strong explosive force. At this moment, she could even feel the aura of death rushing towards her. Even though her body was protected by the ancient pressure, the blood in her body was also stirred up, and her breathing was slightly chaotic. At this moment, she heard a furious voice coming from somewhere in the residence. Chapter 1321. Fengjiu was not the only one who heard Xianyuan Mose's words. Everyone in the mansion heard it as well. They were all shocked and looked towards the main yard of the inner yard. Master actually said that if Han Rong dared to hurt her, he would kill Han Rong. It had to be said that these words set off waves of shock in everyone's hearts. Han Rong's position in the mansion had always been very high. However, it was far from the position of the woman beside Master in Master's heart. It was also because of Xianyuan Mose's words that the other fairy realm experts who had been quietly observing in the shadows of the mansion finally flashed out. However, because of the pressure that enveloped Fengjiu and the airflow that trapped her was too strong, they couldn't go to her side. They could only sternly shout at Han Rong from a few meters away from her. Han Rong, you have no respect for your seniors. Stop it now. Several voices contained a strong pressure that was visible to the naked eye. They attacked Han Rong like thunder, causing blood to flow from the corner of his mouth. However, his eyes were red, and there was madness, unwillingness, and hatred in his eyes. Xianyuan Mose's words that he would kill Han Rong if he dared to hurt Han Rong had angered him. Since Han Rong valued this demonic woman so much, he wanted her dead even more. He did not believe that Han Rong would really kill him after he killed her. Demonic woman. Today, I will definitely kill you. At this moment, Fengjiu did not do anything else. She just stood there quietly, as if she was being suppressed by Han Rong's pressure. However, her expression was normal, and a dark light flashed in her eyes occasionally. It was as if she was waiting for something. When a few fairy realm powerhouses saw that Fengjiu was still able to maintain a calm expression even when facing Han Rong's attack, they were secretly surprised. They couldn't help but think to themselves, could it be that he was scared silly? Otherwise, with her cultivation and strength, how could she not be scared? One had to know that even if Master wanted to protect her, it would be too late. Above her head, the huge sand dragon stirring the sky seemed as if it would rush down in the next moment and destroy and devour her. Fengjiu glanced at the ferocious Han Rong, then looked up at the sand dragon in the sky and muttered, "It's about time. Han Rong, stop." When they saw Han Rong's hands surging with spiritual energy, they couldn't help but be shocked. With the few of them here, if they still couldn't protect the person their master wanted to protect, then, thinking of this, the four of them did not hesitate to attack. For powerful air currents suddenly shot out from their palms and collided with Han Rong, who had condensed a protective air current around her. Bang! Boom! Almost at the same time, the huge sand dragon in the sky exploded into scattered sand, and the spiritual energy instantly disappeared in midair. At the same time, the attacks of the four fairies below broke through Han Rong's protective air current with a bang and collided with Han Rong's body, sending her flying dozens of meters away. This sudden change stunned everyone, both in the open and in the dark. This was because they had all seen that the giant sand dragon in the sky had dispersed and disappeared, and it hadn't been destroyed because of the attacks of the four fairy realm experts below it. It was as if something had been cut off, and in an instant, it could not be controlled and shattered. The flying sand could not condense and scattered, and the spiritual energy dissipated because the supply was cut off. Chapter 13:22. Was it her? Her confidence and calmness. Was it because she knew that Han Rong would not be able to hurt her in the end? Did she do it? How did she do it? When they attacked Han Rong, they also felt that the spiritual energy in his body seemed to have withered. He had lost all his spiritual energy in an instant. He had used up all his spiritual energy, so naturally, he could not control the sand dragon to deliver a fatal blow. But how did she do it? How did she make Han Rong lose all his spiritual energy in an instant? They did not see her do it, pooh. Han Rong spat out a mouthful of blood. He endured the intense pain in his body and stood up. His face had turned pale because of that attack. His entire body swayed as he staggered and was about to fall. He felt that he had lost all his spiritual energy, and his spiritual energy had disappeared completely. He could not help but look at the red figure in shock. His heart was in turmoil, and he was unable to calm down for a long time. Could it be that she had already done something when there was an abnormality in his body and the spiritual energy was constantly being released? Could it be that she was not just fooling around and teasing him, but had already schemed against him? She had predicted that he would not be able to suppress his anger and come to settle the score with her. She had predicted that he would kill her. She had also predicted that he would lose all his spiritual energy and would not be able to hurt her at all. What a good plan. Step by step, he had stepped into her trap without him knowing. She wanted to get rid of him. After today, would Azé let him stay? Impossible. The pressure and air in the sky dissipated and disappeared without a trace. Below, the air in the air gradually dissipated and the pressure dispersed. Fengjiu, who had been standing quietly, looked at Han Rong, who was looking at her in shock. The corners of her lips curled up, and she revealed an evil and cold smile. Just as her lips curled into a cold smile, a red figure flashed and appeared in front of Han Rong. She grabbed him by the throat and lifted him up against the tree behind him. "You want to kill me?" Han Rong's eyes narrowed. His throat was choked, and he was powerless as he was lifted up against the tree. Just a moment ago, he wanted to kill her and thought that he would definitely be able to kill her. Who knew that in the next moment, the situation would turn around? A mere servant dares to be half a master in this manner? I thought you were a smart person, but it seems that I have overestimated you." Her cold voice rang out, and the hand around his neck tightened. Looking at his narrowed eyes, she laughed coldly and threw him to the side, right in front of Xianyuan Mose, who had been standing there for a while. "I won't deal with this person. He's your man, so you can deal with him." When it came to people who wanted her life, she would never leave them alive. If this person wasn't one of Xianyuan Mose's men, she would have snapped his neck with one hand. Xianyuan Mo stood there, followed by Hui Lang and Ying Yi. Hui Lang, who had witnessed the previous scene with his own eyes, felt his heart was still beating wildly at this time. He only felt that it was extremely incredible. At this time, when he saw the ghost doctor throw the heavily injured Han Rong in front of his master for him to deal with, his heart froze, and he couldn't help but look at his master. Han Rong had not only watched his master grow up, he had also saved his master and his son's life. Otherwise, his position in this manner would not be so special. Chapter 1323. In an instant, almost everyone's eyes fell on Xianyuan Mose and Han Rong, both in the dark and in the open. They couldn't guess how their master would deal with Han Rong. After all, he was worthy of being addressed as Uncle Han by their master, which was enough to prove that he was different from them. Even so, after he tried to kill Fengjiu, would their master still tolerate him? The atmosphere seemed to have condensed at this moment. Everyone held their breaths as they watched. After Han Rong stood up with his heavily injured body, he looked at Xianyuan Mose. His lips moved slightly as he opened his mouth. Just as he opened his mouth to say the first word, before he could even say the words, he let out a shrill scream. That scream pierced through the sky and rushed into the clouds, crashing into everyone's eardrums. It was accompanied by the splattering of blood in front of everyone's eyes, deeply shocking everyone's vision and heart. They only saw their master raise his hand, and a sharp blade of air flew out, chopping off Han Rong's right arm. The moment the arm flew out, the blood splattered all over the ground. It was a ghastly sight. Everyone's hearts tightened. At this moment, they all lowered their heads, not daring to look at their master's expression. They only stared at the blood splattered on the ground and the severed arm, as well as the screaming Han Rong, who was holding his severed arm and enduring the intense pain. They saw the disbelief on his face, the unwillingness on his face, and a crazy hatred growing in his eyes. Xianyuan Mose retracted his hand and stood with his hands behind his back. His deep and serene eyes were as deep as a lake, chilling to the bone. He looked condescendingly at Han Rong, who had fallen to the ground. A cold and emotionless voice accompanied by a bloodthirsty, murderous intent came out of his mouth. "I have said before, you are not allowed to touch my woman. Looks like you didn't take it to heart. A slave bullying his master. Do you think I won't kill you? Even though you have watched me grow up, you still don't understand my character." His cold gaze carried a bone-chilling coldness as he stared at the person who was sitting in a daze. He watched as the blood that reached his shoulder seeped out from between his palms and dripped to the ground, blooming into snowflakes. "I respectfully call you Uncle Han because you've been by my mother's side for so many years. You've also saved the lives of my mother and me when we were young. However, it's not for you to control me as an elder, and it's not for you to have the right to kill my woman." As soon as he finished speaking, he flipped his palm, and a force came out from his palm, directly sucking the person on the ground over. A powerful spiritual aura condensed in his palm, and he slapped the person's dantian across the air, shattering the person's dantian. Under everyone's shocked gazes, he destroyed the person's cultivation. Then, he raised his hand and threw the person back to the ground. "You touch my reverse scale. This is the price you have to pay." Xianyuan Mose flung his sleeves and stood with his hands behind his back. His cold voice contained a frightening pressure as he said, "Ying Yi Hui Lang, expel him from the Imperial City. He is never allowed to take a step into the Imperial City again." "Yes." The two people responded in a deep voice and took a step forward to take the person out. At this time, Han Rong, with one arm broken and his cultivation crippled, was seriously injured. At this time, he no longer had the strength to speak. He could only stare at Fengjiu with a pair of malicious eyes, as if he wanted to remember her face in his mind. Chapter 1324. From being in charge of the Black Dungeon to having his cultivation crippled and banished from the Imperial City, it was as if he had fallen from the sky to the ground. An ordinary person would have bitten off their tongue and committed suicide after such an incident. After all, to a fairy realm expert, having his dantian shattered and his cultivation crippled was worse than being killed. How could he get used to the life of an ordinary person if he was used to the life of an expert? Moreover, they looked at the figure being taken away. With every step that Ying Yi and Hui Lang took, Han Rong's body and face changed visibly. He quickly aged and became an old man with white hair and a face full of wrinkles. For a cultivator, once his cultivation was destroyed and his strength was crippled, he could only become an ordinary person. His lifespan, which was originally increased by his cultivation, would also be reduced because of his cultivation. Han Rong, who was banished like this, would definitely die soon. Xianyuan Mo slowly walked up to Fengjiu and asked, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." She looked at him and asked, "He saved your life and your mother's?" So that's how it was. Huiling only told her that he had watched Mo's grow up. He did not mention that he had saved their lives. However, even if he knew, today's scene was inevitable. She only needed to ask a little to know his eating habits. Even if he wanted to, he would not be able to guard against her. If he did not want to kill her, today's result would only be him making a fool of himself. However, the moment he wanted to kill her, the result would be different. The surrounding people silently retreated, leaving only the two of them in the same place. Even so, it can't be used as a life-saving talisman to kill you. He reached out and pulled her into his embrace. Feeling the reality of her in his arms, his heart finally calmed down. God knows how anxious and furious he was when he saw that scene. He was afraid that something would happen to her, and even more afraid that the person who hurt her was someone close to him. If that was the case, he would not be able to forgive himself. Fortunately, she was fine and standing in front of him. "Sorry, I made you worry." Fengjiu wrapped his arms around his waist and pressed his face against his chest, apologizing softly. Although she was prepared, he didn't know. When she heard his anxious and worried voice coming from the manor, she didn't feel good. He rested his chin on the top of her head and gently stroked her soft hair with one hand. He said slowly, "It's good that you're okay." In the imperial palace, when the monarch heard the news from the secret guard, he was furious and slammed his hand on the armrest. This Han Rong actually wants to kill Fengjiu? How audacious! Who did he think he was? Even a servant dares to be so lawless. How presumptuous! The shadow guard lowered his head and reported, "The crown prince has already chopped off one of his arms, crippled his cultivation, and expelled him from the imperial city." "Oomph. If he didn't do that, I wouldn't mind helping him. I've long disliked that Han Rong." The monarch gave a cold snort. He was quite satisfied with Xianyuan Mo's actions. However, because of this, it has alarmed the various powers in the imperial city. Other than the monarch sending this subordinate to investigate, the various powers in the imperial city have also sent people to investigate. This subordinate estimates that in a day or two, the news of the crown prince having a woman by his side will spread. Chapter 1325. After a long while, he waved his hand. "Forget it. Let's not bother about him. He can handle his own matters." As he spoke, he stood up, flung his sleeves, and walked out. As the news of the crown prince cutting off one of Han Rong's arms and banishing her spread, the various powers in the imperial city were curious as to who that woman was. Thus, they secretly asked around. However, the people in the crown prince's residence were tight-lipped, and they could not get any information out of them. They did not even know what that woman looked like. They could only ask around on the streets, and they found out that the woman was dressed in red, and her face was covered by a veil. Crown Prince Xianyuan Mo's did not have a single woman by his side all year round. Now that such a woman had suddenly appeared, and he had even crippled an important person by his side for her, it was obvious that this woman had a special place in his heart. However, no matter how curious they were, they could not find out any other information about that woman a few days later in the residence. Feng Jiu was resting on a soft couch in the courtyard with his eyes closed, while Xianyuan Mose was taking care of business at the stone table beside him. Dong, who had been sent away, and the remaining 3 people, after witnessing the scene from a few days ago, had lost all interest in Xianyuan Mose. They even avoided him, afraid that if they got too close, Feng Jiu would be angered and punish them. On the evening of the day that Han Rong was banished, the 3 of them knelt in front of Feng Jiu and told him everything that Han Rong had asked them to do. They did not dare to hide anything. Feng Jiu already knew about this, but seeing that the 3 of them were more obedient, he did not pay much attention to them. He only allowed them to stay by her side to assist her, and when she was about to leave, he would arrange for them to be in the outer courtyard. She lay on the soft couch with her eyes closed and waved her hand to dismiss the few people who were massaging her legs. She looked at the sky and then looked at Xianyuan Mose, who was taking care of business. She paused for a moment and said, "Mose, I plan to leave." As soon as she said this, the busy Xianyuan Mose paused and looked at her. "You're leaving? So soon? Didn't you say you have a few months?" Feng Jiu rolled his eyes. "I've been living here for more than 2 months. Including the journey back and forth, isn't that a few months? Can't you stay for a few more days?" he asked with a slight frown. He looked at her and said, "Actually, you can let me handle your matters." This way, she wouldn't have to leave and could stay by his side. However, he knew that she didn't want to rely on him. He knew that she wanted to become stronger. Thus, even if he was reluctant, he could only let her handle it herself and train herself. "Stay for 2 more days. I'll stay for 2 more days before leaving." She sat up and said, "I'm already here. What's there to be reluctant about? What's more, as long as I have the chance, I'll come back to see you. You can tell me where you want to go. That way, I can go and see you." Unexpectedly, she smiled slyly. "I'm not telling you." Hearing this, he sighed helplessly. "All right, even if you don't tell me, I'll find out in the future. Since you're leaving, I won't do anything else these 2 days. I'll accompany you. You should go and take care of your business. Don't delay it." Chapter 13:26. "Do you really want to accompany me?" She blinked, and her eyes flashed with an inexplicable light, as if she was thinking of something evil. "Yes," he replied, and waited for her to continue. She immediately jumped up and said, "Then let's change our clothes and go out. You can put on a beard while you're at it." Hearing this, he glanced at her with a strange expression and said, "Didn't you think that I'm too old?" She kept calling him uncle, and now she wanted him to change into Ling Mohan. She held back her laughter and said, "Why would I? Even if you're old, you're still a very handsome and cool uncle. Don't worry, I won't dislike you no matter what. It's just that if you go out with me like this, you'll be too eye-catching, especially when those women are staring at you. So, it's better that we change our appearance when we go out to play." Thus, she pushed him into the room and called Hui Lang to help him change into his clothes and put on his beard. She quickly went into the room and found a green robe to put on, and then slightly trimmed it before walking out of the room. When she came out, she saw Xianyuan Mose, who was wearing a gray robe and had a big beard on his face, sitting there drinking tea. She immediately walked up to him with a smile and looked at him from head to toe. "Uncle, you look so friendly. Sigh, I haven't seen you with a big beard in a long time." Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose's mouth twitched. He glanced at her and saw that she was wearing a green robe, which was inconspicuous and not ostentatious. Even her face had been groomed. He nodded and said, "You look good, let's go." He stood up and naturally held her hand as they walked out the door. Seeing the 2 of them go out, Hui Lang and Ying Yi watched from behind. After a while, Hui Lang elbowed Ying Yi beside him and said, "Do you think we should follow them?" "Yes," Ying Yi said and had already moved forward. Seeing this, Hui Lang grinned and also moved forward, following behind them secretly. When the 2 of them followed in the dark, they saw the bearded man holding the hand of a white-robed youth walking on the street. Ying's eyes flashed, and a smile appeared in his eyes. On the other hand, Huilang was even more direct. He grinned and looked at the two people who acted as if there was no one else around them. Master is so domineering. You see, the entire street seems to only be occupied by the two of them. Two grown men holding hands on the street. This scene is so strange no matter how you look at it. As long as Master thinks it's good, it's fine. Don't talk too much, he said in a low voice. Huilang couldn't help but grin when he saw the crowd sizing up the two of them from time to time. He didn't say anything else and just quietly followed them in the dark. Xianyuan Mose completely ignored the gazes around him. He held her hand and looked around. When he saw a small stall selling sugar-fried chestnuts on the street ahead, he walked over with Fengjiu. "Give me a pack." As soon as he finished speaking, the money was already placed on the stall. "Okay." The peddler's tone was brisk. He quickly packed a pack of sugar-fried chestnuts and handed it over. "Guest, your sugar-fried chestnuts are delicious. Come again next time." As he spoke, he curiously looked at the two holding hands. These two grown men were actually holding hands on the street? That was way too bold of him. Chapter 13:27. "Here, open your mouth." She brought the peeled chestnuts to his mouth. At that moment, the people on the street who were curious about the two of them could not help but widen their eyes when they saw them. Xianyuan Mose glanced at the people on the street who were looking at them curiously with wide eyes. He looked a little embarrassed and a little uncomfortable, but his heart was faintly jumping with joy and joy. He was uncomfortable and embarrassed because he had never acted like this in front of others. But he was happy because Fengjiu was not afraid of the people's gazes and intimately fed him food. This kind of feeling was just like a public display of affection. Thinking of this, he proudly glanced at the people around him. Under those people's gazes, he opened his mouth and ate the chestnut she brought to his mouth. His ears were slightly red, but his face was still cold. He nodded and said, "And it tastes good." It was more than just good. It was so sweet that it entered his heart and made him feel like he was floating. Fengjiu did not know what he was thinking. In addition, half of his face was covered by the big beard, so she could not see his expression clearly. She only knew that he habitually kept a straight face and looked like he did not want anyone to get close to him. She smiled and said, "You like it? Then I'll peel it for you." "Okay." Her short reply couldn't hide the joy in her eyes and the joy in her heart. The two of them walked and strolled. When Fengjiu came across something interesting, she would stop to take a look and touch it, while Xianyuan Mose would ask from the side, "You like it? I'll buy it." After walking down a few streets, Fengjiu could not help but facepalm. "Don't buy any more. I just looked at it a little longer. If I buy everything that I looked at a little longer, it would be a waste. Besides, there are some things that I don't need. It's okay. I have money." Hearing his domineering words, Fengjiu could not help but laugh. She looked at him and said, Yes, I know you have money. You're amazing. This man, how could he be so cute?" Pfft, two country bumpkins. Suddenly, a disdainful voice rang out, attracting their attention. The two of them looked at each other, then looked at the person who spoke. They saw a few well-dressed young masters with two women standing not far away. One of them was holding a fan in his hand and was leisurely fanning himself. His eyes were looking at them with disdain and contempt. "They're not just two country bumpkins. I think they're gay. How can it be normal for two grown men to act so intimately on the street?" Xianyuan Mose glanced at them and frowned. His eyes were filled with displeasure. Fengjiu chuckled and held his hand. "Don't worry about them. Let's go. They were just irrelevant people. Why should he get angry over them? Moreover, what do they know? One had to know that sometimes what one saw with their eyes might not be true." Of course, they wanted to leave and didn't bicker with them, but those people thought that they were easy to bully because they backed down. Unexpectedly, they raised their voice and said, "Hey, didn't you say you have money? Do you dare to go somewhere with us to play?" Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu continued to walk forward, pretending not to hear. "What? You don't dare?" A few men stepped forward and blocked their way. They stared at their clothes and said, You dare to say you have money in front of this young master? How arrogant! Chapter 1328. He glanced at him. It's that bastard brother of his, using his concubine mother's favor to stir up trouble all day long. But this time he's provoked Master and the ghost doctor. His ability isn't small either. When I go back and tell Yang Yong about it, I reckon his face will darken. All right, stop talking. Look in front. He gestured for him to keep quiet. Feng Jiu, who was originally preparing to leave, stopped in his tracks and sized up the person, asking, "Are you very rich?" That person raised his chin like a proud peacock. "Of course. Brat, you're not from here, right? You don't recognize this young master?" "That's right. This is young Master Yang, an aristocratic family from the imperial city. His elder brother, Yang Yong, is a favorite of the crown prince." The two men standing next to him laughed as they announced Yang Yong's identity. When they heard this, Xinyuan Mo's and Fengjiu's expressions changed. A strange look flashed across their eyes. Yang Yong's younger brother? This guy? The two of them carefully sized him up again, seeing that this person was only at the peak of the foundation establishment stage, not even a golden core stage cultivator. He was dressed like a noble young master, but this kind of temperament, this kind of posture, made people not dare to be respectful. "Where did you say we were going?" Feng Jiu asked with a smile, his eyes flashing with a cunning light. When they heard this, they looked at each other, revealing a cold smile. That bastard brother of Yang Yong glanced at the two of them, then turned to leave. "Follow me if you have the guts." He turned to leave. The people behind him also followed. It was very obvious that he was the leader of the group. "Let's go and have some fun," Feng Jiu said with a smile, pulling Xinyuan Mo's to follow them. "It can't be. The place you were talking about is the casino?" Feng Jiu looked at the noisy place in front of her. The sounds of people placing their bets and opening their hands messily entered her ears. She had been in the imperial city for so long, but this was the first time she had been to a casino in the imperial city. Looking at the scale, it was actually quite big. "What? Scared? This is the most luxurious casino in the imperial city. You'll need at least 10,000 gold coins to enter this place. Today, you're only able to enter because of me." Yang Yong's younger brother had a smug look on his face as he took out an identity jade card and led them inside. As for the two women who had been following him, they stopped outside the casino and left. After all, they were women. If news of them entering such a place spread, it would be bad for their reputation. Therefore, they did not follow them in. Feng Jiu looked at the small mountain of gold coins on the table, and his eyes lit up. "Scared. I'm really scared. I didn't expect there to be such a place in the imperial city." If Ning Lang, who loved money as much as his life, came here, he probably wouldn't be able to take a step forward. Xinyuan Mo's, who was next to her, saw her eyes shining as she stared at the gold coins and treasures on the table. He couldn't help but shake his head. Her interests and hobbies seemed to be different from ordinary girls. So it's third young Master Yang who has come. A steward came out to greet them. In the midst of the lively scene, he cupped his hands and bowed to the man, surnamed Yang. He looked at the two men beside him, as well as Feng Jiu and Xinyuan Mo's, and asked, "Third young Master Yang, did you bring your friends here to play? What do you want to play today?" Chapter 1329. "Brat, what are you playing over there? This young master called you here so that you can bet with me." He shouted in annoyance. "I'm going to win some money first." Feng Jiu replied without turning her head. She stared at the two colored cups on the table and heard the people around her shouting for big and small. She grinned and shouted, "Big." Xinyuan Mo's watched her play and did not stop her. Seeing her win a lot after a few rounds, many people around them exclaimed that this youth was lucky. But luck? As for her, he had never thought that she relied on luck. "Pfft, didn't you say you were rich? So you don't even have money?" Yang Sen sneered and opened his fan. He glanced at the young man who was gambling enthusiastically, then looked at the bearded man and asked, "Hey, aren't you going down to play a few rounds?" Xinyuan Mo's did not even pay attention to him. His attention was only on Fengjiu. All in, Fengjiu shouted and pushed the small mountain of gold coins in front of him to the side of the big cup. You're betting big again? You've already won 5 rounds of big. There's no way you're betting big again. That's right, that's right. Little brother, you're betting so much money on big. Aren't you afraid that you'll lose everything in small? What's there to worry about? Of those who could come here to play, which one of them didn't have money? Maybe they won't even care about this little bit. That's true. Ha ha. Then I won't bet. I won't bet on big with him. I'll bet on small too. Small. I'll definitely bet on small this round. Good, good, good. I'm done betting. At the same time, the cover of the cup was removed, revealing the numbers inside. 4, 5, 6 big. Ha ha, I won again. Fengjiu said happily. He withdrew his hand and put the gold coins in front of him. He took out his chinquin pouch and began to put them in. The people around them could not help but feel jealous. Little brother, are you betting big or small this time? I'll bet with you this round. That's right, I'll follow you too. Little brother, do you want to buy big or small? All of them were asking questions, thinking that they would definitely win if they followed this young man. Unexpectedly, the young man smiled and waved his hand. I'm not playing anymore. I'm going to play with the one over there. You guys continue. With that, he left the table. Look, we've won so much. She handed the chinquin pouch to Xinyuan Mose with a face full of joy. I didn't expect you to have some skills. Yangsen glanced at Fengjiu and said, Let's go. Let's go up there and play big. You have money? Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and glanced at him. If you don't have real money, I won't play with you. Tisk, do you think I don't have money? Don't you know that our Yang family is the wealthiest among the aristocratic families in the imperial city? As he spoke, he turned to the steward beside him and said, Lead the way. Get a table on the 2nd floor. All right, 3rd young master Yang, please come upstairs. Everyone, please come upstairs. The steward gestured for them to go up, and at the same time, glanced at Fengjiu. They had gambled a few times and won all of them. This was definitely not a fluke. However, this 3rd young master Yang had been in the casino for a long time and had some skills. It would be difficult for this young man to beat him. Chapter 1330. Stepping into the 2nd floor, it was obviously different from the 1st floor. The upper floors were separated by rooms, but they were not enclosed rooms. Instead, there was a screen separating each long table. There were also chairs placed beside the tables. The tables on the 1st floor did not have chairs. Everyone was crowding around the tables, gambling. It was obvious that the difference on the 2nd floor was slightly better. She glanced around. Because of the screen, she could only vaguely see people sitting at each long table, but she could not see the bets on the table. They were led by the manager to another long table. The few of them sat down, and the servants served tea and snacks. At the same time, a woman in tight clothes was sent over to ask them how they would like to play. What do you want to play? Tell me. I'll go easy on you. As Yangsen spoke, he leaned back in his chair and looked at Fengjiu and Xinyuan Mose with disdain. Since you have so much money, of course we'll gamble. Fengjiu said matter-of-factly. He picked up the gambling cup on the table and shook it. He asked, Just the 2 of us? Do they want to play? He looked at the other 2 men. Yes, we have to play with you no matter what, right? The 2 of them said in unison. They naturally dared to gamble. After all, as the children of aristocratic families, they still had some money on them. Moreover, with Yangsan around, they naturally felt more at ease. After all, Yangsan had learned gambling skills before. All right, let's play the most direct game, big or small. No problem. The few of them began to play. Xinyuan Mose watched from the side and did not say anything. Among the 2 of them, he did not play. Only Fengjiu played with them. When Fengjiu won one round after another, Yangsan was still able to hold his ground. As for the other 2, their foreheads were already sweating. Should we bet on big or small? The 2 of them looked at Yangsan and asked. Small. Yangsan frowned and said. After betting gold coins, the 2 of them could only take out their valuables and bet. When the results came out big again, their faces instantly turned pale. There's nothing left. We've all lost. This is going to be troublesome. How am I going to explain this when I get back? The two of them sat there absent-mindedly, watching as even the valuables on their waist were taken away by the young man. Looking at his satisfied and happy face, they were so angry that they clenched their teeth, but there was nothing they could do. In the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, they had already lost to the point that they had even taken off their clothes. Their upper bodies were naked, only wearing a pair of pants that reached their thighs. They were ashamed and angry. If they had known that this kid's gambling skills were so good, they wouldn't have gambled with him even if they were beaten to death. However, even if they regretted it now, they couldn't get back what they had lost. Get out, Xianyuan Mose glanced at them, feeling that the two men's bare upper bodies were an eyesore. The two of them only felt a powerful and intimidating pressure coming at them, causing their faces to turn pale. They didn't even dare to speak or resist. They just stood up and walked out just like that. They went down the first floor and quickly left. Fengjie, who was sitting at the side, held his chin with one hand and tilted his head slightly to look at Xianyuan Mose. He smiled and asked, "Do you want to play a few rounds as well?" "No need, you can play," he said and took a sip of tea. Chapter 13:31. Although Yang San was muddle-headed, his eyesight was not bad. After playing so many games, he knew that the youth in front of him did not win because of luck, but because he really had some skills. In addition, when the big man spoke, the two people did not dare to say a word and ran away. Although the pressure in that moment did not hit him, he could still clearly feel the terror of the other party. At this time, his heart was in a mess, and cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He lifted his sleeve to wipe the sweat, picked up the tea, and drank a few mouthfuls, and said, "I'll go and relieve myself. I'll come back and talk." As he spoke, he stood up and hurried out. "Do you think he'll escape by going to the toilet?" Fengjie asked with a smile as he held his chin and looked at Xianyuan Mose. Xianyuan Mose took a sip of tea and said calmly, "He won't be able to escape." Yes, he won't be able to escape. Yang San was sure that he wanted to escape by going to the toilet. He felt that if he continued to gamble, he would end up like the two people. After playing for so long, he could more or less figure out the two people's strength. They were definitely not people he could provoke. It was better to run away. But who knew that just as he was about to leave by climbing over the wall, a voice came from behind him. "Where do you think you're going?" His body stiffened, and he lay there in a daze for a moment. Then he realized that it was not the two people's voices, but when he turned around, he was so scared that his face turned white. "Big Brother Hui Lang, Big Brother," and his body trembled, and he quickly climbed down from above. Why are you here? My second brother didn't come, right?" Hui Lang snorted and looked at him. "Don't call me Big Brother, Big Brother. We're not that close. Quickly go back after you're done." "Oh yes, I'll go back right away. He hurriedly replied. Just as he was about to turn around and climb over the wall, a hand landed on his shoulder. "I told you to go back inside and continue gambling. Where do you think you're going?" Hui Lang asked with a sinister smile. Hearing this, his face turned white. Go back inside and continue gambling? That's right. Didn't you provoke them? You want to escape now? Don't even think about it. Hurry up and go back." He gave him a shove, then stood there with his arms crossed and stared at him. Yang San swallowed his saliva and asked cautiously, "Big Brother Hui and Hui Lang know them." "What gray Hui Lang? You brat. Are you asking for a beating? So much nonsense. If you don't go in, I'll kick you in." Hui Lang snorted coldly. "Now you're scared? What were you doing just now?" Seeing this, he could only brace himself and walk back while thinking, who are those two people? Hui Lang and Ying Yi were the crown prince's personal bodyguards. Why were they here? Could it be thinking of that possibility and then thinking of that big man's shout and the powerful pressure for a moment, his legs went soft and he almost knelt down. When he returned, he saw that the two of them were still sitting there. One of them was drinking tea while the other was resting his chin on his hand. They looked bored from waiting. With a pale face, he hurriedly stepped forward and said, The two of you. Why don't I invite the two of you to a restaurant to eat?" "No need, have a seat. Let's continue." Fengjie smiled and gestured with his eyes. Seeing this, he could only sit down stiffly, his body trembling. After thinking for a moment, he took out all the money and treasures he had on him, piling them on the table and pushing them in front of Fengjiu. Chapter 1332. Look at me, my body isn't feeling well. Can you let me go back first? He looked at Fengjiu anxiously, feeling a bit uneasy. Fengjiu looked at the pile of treasures on the table and felt a bit dazzled. She looked at him again and saw that he really didn't have the courage. With so many treasures as an apology, she smiled and nodded. All right then, since you know you're wrong, I'll be magnanimous and not bicker with you. I'll accept these things. You can go. Yes, thank you, young master. Thank you, young master. He was overjoyed when he heard this and quickly stood up. He cupped his hands in thanks and left in a hurry. Only the two of them were left sitting at the table. Xin Yuan Mose saw her greedy look as she held the treasures and smiled. He couldn't help but find it funny. You like these things that much? She looked as if she wanted to kiss them a few times. He didn't see her with such an infatuated and excited gaze. Who wouldn't like such dazzling and beautiful things? As she spoke, she took out a chinquin pouch and put it away. She said, I made a lot of money today. If I knew there was such a good place in the imperial city, I wouldn't have stayed in the manor all day. There are even more treasures in the manor's treasury. Why aren't you interested in taking a look? They're all in the manor. What's there to see? These are different. Look, other people's things become ours. This kind of feeling makes people excited. She put away the chinquin pouch and said, Let's go outside and play a few more rounds? All right, whatever you like. He knew her gambling skills were good, so he let her be. The two of them went next door to play. Most of the time, it was Fengjiu playing while Xin Yuan Mose watched from the side. In less than an hour, they changed tables several times. Finally, they won a lot and prepared to leave with satisfaction. The people in the casino had their eyes on Fengjiu since she never lost a bet. Thus, the people above asked, Who are those two people? They seem to be outsiders. It's the first time they came to our casino. They were brought by Yang Sangongzi. However, Yang Sangongzi and the others lost everything and left. Oh, you're quite capable. As the middle-aged man spoke, his gaze swept past the boy and landed on the burly man. He frowned slightly. Do you want me to go down? A tall and thin man with bright eyes asked. No need. The middle-aged man shook his head. I can't see through these two people, but they give me a very dangerous feeling. It's better not to act rashly to avoid unnecessary trouble for the casino. The tall and thin man was slightly surprised. He glanced at the two and nodded. Yes. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw that the two people had already walked out. A few people in the casino looked at each other and followed after them. They've left, but there are still a few tails following behind them. The tall and skinny man said. Get someone to follow them from afar. Don't do anything, the middle-aged man ordered. Yes, the tall and thin man replied and left with the other three, secretly following behind those people. After leaving the casino, Xin Yuan Mose and Fengjiu felt a few tails following behind them. However, they didn't care. They didn't care about those people. Even if they wanted to attack, they didn't need to. Let's go watch the sunset. Fengjiu looked at him and said, Okay. Chapter 1333. Therefore, the two of them went out of the city together. When they were out of the city, the gamblers behind them also dashed out. When they were about to follow them, they were stopped by Ying, Yi, and Hui Lang. Where do you want to go? Hui Lang took out his long sword and stared at the gamblers who were full of killing intent. These people should be casual cultivators who mingled in the casino. They thought they had targeted a fat sheep. Humph. Two people come to die. I'll fulfill your wish. One of them stared at Hui Lang with gloomy eyes like a poisonous snake. The next moment, he took out his long sword and went straight to Hui Lang. Stop us from getting rich. You're courting death. The other gamblers also shouted. Their spiritual power surged, and Meng and Zhao Ying Yi surrounded them. In their view, there were 5 of them, and the other side only had 2 people. If they dared to block their way, They were definitely courting death. Ingyi's face was cold. He flicked the sword at his waist, and at the same time, a black figure flashed out. His long sword carried a fierce, murderous aura, and he took the life of the person who rushed to the front. The sword's shadow flashed, and a trace of scarlet blood instantly oozed out from the neck of a gambler. The man's eyes widened in disbelief, and he stared in front of him. His body stiffened, and he fell down with a muffled groan. Hiss! What a fast sword! The other gamblers gasped. They saw the sword's shadow flash out, and they didn't see how he took the life of a gambler. They couldn't help but be shocked, but they didn't retreat. Instead, they gritted their teeth and rushed forward. Kill him! Ingyi's figure flashed past the dead gambler and attacked the second gambler. When the two swords collided, there was a sonorous sound, and a trace of sparks burst out. The fierce sword chi surged around, and the murderous intent was terrifying. On the other side, Huilang saw that Ingyi was slow, but he killed a gambler first. When he heard those people exclaiming that Ingyi's sword was so fast, he was immediately dissatisfied. He shouted, "My sword is not slow. I'll let you taste my power." Swish! Sword chi flowed out like a stream. His unexpected attack was not aimed at the person in front of him, but at the person beside him. Although that person was prepared, he did not expect Huilang's sword to attack him instead of the opponent in front of him. By the time he reacted, it was already too late to block. He only felt a sharp pain radiating from his body, and the spiritual power he had condensed all over his body dissipated in an instant. Looking down, there was a bloody hole in his dantian, and the golden core in his body had been shattered. Bang! He couldn't even scream. It was as if his breath was stuck in his throat. His body stiffened and fell forward. His body twitched a few times before he stopped breathing. Bang! The moment the sword chi killed that person, Huilang's palm struck out towards the opponent in front of him. A palm strike that contained a strong airflow struck out and instantly sent him flying several meters away, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Pooh! The man stared in horror at Huilang, whose entire body was emanating a murderous aura. He spat out a mouthful of blood that splashed all over his body. Suppressing the serious injuries in his body, he turned around and fled. You want to leave? Wait for your grandpa wolf to agree. Huilang snorted. He aimed the long sword in his hand at the man's back and patted the hilt of the sword with his other hand. The long sword pierced through the man's body with a whoosh. Chapter 1334. They didn't dare to join the fun to see what was going on. Only cultivators who were confident in their own strength would dare to be curious about such things. It was best for them to hurry into the city and avoid trouble. And in the shadows, the tall and thin man from the casino who was watching this scene had a slight change in expression. Perhaps others might not recognize those two, but to him, a native of the imperial city, it was impossible for him not to recognize those two. Beside Crown Prince Xianyuan, other than the second young master of the Yang family, who was the steward of the residence, there were also two guards who followed him closely. Those were the shadow guarding Yi, and the other was the guard called Huilang. It was reported that Yi was the head of the shadow guards, and Huilang was the captain of the guards. Both of them were extremely skilled and were loyal and devoted. They were deeply trusted by Crown Prince Xianyuan Mose. It could be said that wherever he went, he would bring these two with him. And now, these two people had appeared here to stop those gamblers. This made him uncontrollably shocked, and he tried to guess who the bearded man and the youth from before were. He carefully glanced in front of him and saw the corpses of those gamblers lying on the ground. The thick smell of blood permeated the air, and the murderous aura was even more frightening. At that moment, he gestured, and the few of them quietly retreated, quickly returning. They couldn't follow them anymore. If they did, he was sure that they would end up like those people. 5 people, I killed 3. Huilang said proudly, his tone boasting. He glanced at him and couldn't be bothered to argue with him. He only said, those people left. As he said that, He glanced at the place where those people were originally hiding. They were from the casino. They probably just wanted to investigate the identities of Master and the Ghost Doctor. If they left, then they left. There's no need to bother with them. Hui Lang said casually, wiping the sword in his hand and putting it away. Take care of the corpses on the ground. He said, we still have to deal with them? Grey Wolf glared. If we kill them, do we still have to find a hole to bury them? Hearing this, Yi looked at him with a strange expression before taking out a bottle of something and pouring it on those people. Sizzling sounds could be heard, and soon, all of the corpses on the ground were corroded, leaving only their clothes and blood on the ground. Didn't you say that the corpse-dissolving water is gone? Where did you get it? Give me some. Hui Lang stretched out his hand and begged. I had the Ghost Doctor concoct it. As he spoke, he handed over 2 bottles to him. Use it sparingly. Hui Lang's eyes lit up when he heard that it was Fengjiu's. Just as he was about to ask her to give him some when he went back, he remembered that she was leaving in 2 days. He couldn't help but sigh. She's leaving in 2 days. I don't know when I'll see her again. Hearing this, Yi said, Master should be the one worrying. What are you worrying about? Hui Lang muttered. Do you think I'm like you? After being together for so long, I also have feelings for the Ghost Doctor. I won't be willing to let her leave. I'll tell Master about this. After taking care of the corpses, he turned and walked back. Chapter 1335. Seeing him walk away without looking back, he quickly chased after him and shouted, Hey, Yi, I'm talking to you. Did you hear me? At the same time, in the casino, the tall and skinny man told the middle-aged man what he had seen. The middle-aged man couldn't help but be secretly shocked. Fortunately, I didn't let you guys mess around. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Thinking of that possibility, he couldn't help but be secretly afraid. As the manager of the casino, any decision could affect the survival of the casino. Because of this, he was used to thinking twice before doing anything and looking at the bigger picture. It was also because of this that the casino's position in the Imperial City was solidifying day by day. Today, if he had let his subordinates deal with those 2 people for the sake of that small profit, the consequences could be imagined. Master, could this bearded man be? The tall and skinny man guessed, looking at him and asking. And it should be him. Otherwise, Yi and Hui Lang wouldn't have appeared there. The middle-aged man said, lightly exhaling. Hearing this, the tall and skinny man was secretly shocked, feeling that he had walked on the edge of life and death. That was close. Compared to the bustling city, Chaoyang Mountain was exceptionally tranquil and beautiful. 2 figures sat side by side at the top of the mountain, watching the sunset slowly slide down from the horizon, dyeing the sky red with a charming rosy glow. As the sun went down the mountain, the sky gradually darkened. The 2 sat on the mountaintop, enjoying the wind. Fengjiu leaned in Xianyuan Mo's arms, while Xianyuan Mo hugged her, shielding her from the chill of the night. It's cooler on the mountain at night. Let's go back. He whispered in her ear, greedily enjoying the leisurely time together. Then you carry me back. She acted shamelessly, slightly raising her head to look at him with a smile. Okay. He leaned down, kissing those tempting lips. After a light kiss, he still wanted more. Let's go back and continue. He looked at her and said. Hearing this, Fengjiu laughed, looking at him angrily. Don't even think about it. Hearing this, he sighed and stood up. With a bitter tone, he said, All right then, I'll just think about it in my dreams at night. As he spoke, he took out a cloak and draped it over her body. Then, he turned around and bent down, indicating, Come on, I'll carry you back. If you're tired, you can lie on my back and sleep. Seeing this, her eyes lit up, and she jumped onto his back. After lying on top of him, she wrapped her arms around his neck and clamped her legs around his waist. Okay, let's go. His broad shoulders were stiff and taut, but it gave people a sense of security and reliability. She laid on his back and felt the warmth of his body passing into her body. In this night, it was exceptionally comfortable and warm. Hold me tight. He put his hands behind his back and held her legs, walking down the mountain. His steps were not fast or slow, and he was not in a hurry to fly back. Instead, he carried Fengjiu down the mountain step by step, chatting with her. If you're cold, wrap the cloak tightly, don't let the wind in. You can also curl up in the cloak and sleep. His steps were steady as he spoke. Chapter 1336. Feeling her eyelids getting heavier, she pressed her face against his neck and fell into a deep sleep. Xianyuan Mose, who was walking slowly, felt her warm breath on his neck. He couldn't help but pause in his steps. He turned his head slightly and glanced at her. Seeing that she had already fallen asleep, he didn't say anything and continued walking slowly. He walked very slowly and steadily, as if he was carrying the entire world on his back. He was careful not to wake her up. As for the woman who was sleeping soundly on his back, she also fell asleep peacefully. With him by her side, she never had to worry about anything else. Hui Lang, who was waiting outside the residence, saw that the sky had darkened and the two still hadn't returned. He couldn't help but feel a little worried. Logically speaking, they were just going to watch the sunset, so they should have already reached the residence by now. At this time, the stars in night sky were twinkling and the moon was shining brightly, but the two still hadn't returned. Why don't we wait outside the city? Hui Lang looked at Ying Yi beside him and said, with Master's strength and the ghost doctor's strength, even ghosts and serpents would have to take a detour. Ying Yi crossed his arms in front of him and leaned against the door. That's true. Hui Lang nodded. With their strength, anyone who met them would have to turn around and leave. Only those who didn't have eyes would choose to attack them. You're back. Ying Yi's voice sounded. Where? Grey Wolf hurriedly turned his head to look and saw his master's familiar figure slowly walking out of the night with a person on his back. Seeing this, he hurriedly ran forward. Moss! Just as he was about to speak, he was stopped by a look. Seeing this, he glanced at the sleeping ghost doctor. She was sleeping soundly on his master's back, so he lowered his voice and asked, Master, do you want me to bring the ghost doctor in? He saw that his master's feet were covered in thick mud. It was obvious that he had walked back. If he had walked back from Chaoyang Mountain, the journey wouldn't have been short. It was quite tiring to carry a person like this all the time, who knew that his good intentions would only be met with a cold gaze from his master. Go get someone to prepare water for a bath. As he spoke, he walked past him. Hui Lang scratched his head and looked at Ying Yi. Did I say something wrong again? Ying Yi glanced at him and turned to enter the residence. At the same time, he said, Why are you being so attentive to the ghost doctor? Hui Lang was stunned. He opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything for a long time. He only had good intentions. How was he trying to curry favor for no reason? As soon as they entered the residence, Fengjiu, who was sleeping on Xianyuan Mose's back, woke up. When she opened her eyes in a daze, she saw that they were already inside the residence. She couldn't help but be startled. We're here. We're home. I'll take you to the room to sleep. Xianyuan Mose slightly tilted his head to look at her, his lips revealing a doting smile. Put me down, put me down. She struggled to jump down. When she saw the thick layer of mud beside his boots, she couldn't help but blink. She then looked at the sky and asked, You didn't come back on your sword? The wind is too strong when I come back on my sword. As he spoke, he rubbed his sore arms. You idiot. She glared at him and said with heartache, Then you could have told me to get up. How tiring would it be to walk back from there? As she spoke, she patted her head. It's all my fault. If I didn't let you carry me, it would have been better. Idiot. Xianyuan Mose laughed as he held her hand. If I couldn't carry you, how would I dare to marry you? Chapter 1337. How are they two different things? Carrying you on my back means that you are my responsibility. I have to bring you home. All right, let's not talk about it anymore. I'll have someone prepare a bath. You just woke up, so you should slowly take a bath. I'll go take a bath first. He held her hand and walked step by step towards the main courtyard. Fengjiu turned her head to look at him. Hearing his words and seeing him tightly holding her hand, her heart couldn't help but tremble. She didn't say anything, only tightly holding his hand and following him to the main courtyard. When they arrived at the main courtyard, the two of them first ate a few pieces of pastries to fill their stomachs before going into their own rooms to take a bath. Fengjiu didn't soak for long. After soaking for a while, she got up, put on her casual clothes, and walked out of the room, heading towards Xianyuan Mo's room. The hidden guards in the courtyard had already been evacuated 10 meters away. Ying Yi and Hui Lang were also guarding the courtyard. As for the servant girls, they had already been sent back to their rooms. Thus, she stealthily pushed open the door and entered. Inside the bathtub, Xianyuan Mo, who was resting against the wall, already knew that she had come. Thus, he closed his eyes and pretended to be asleep, waiting to see what she wanted to do. Fengjiu, who had softly walked in, poked her head out. When she saw the naked figure behind the screen with his hands on the edge of the bathtub, lying on his back with his eyes closed, she couldn't help but gulp. She couldn't move her eyes away. There was no movement for a while, but he could feel that woman's gaze was like a wolf sizing up his body. This made Xianyuan Mo feel a bit nervous. Even his body tensed up. He felt like even the bathtub couldn't block her hot gaze. His heart felt strange. This woman, she clearly didn't want to look but liked to hide on the side and watch. It was fine if she just watched, but watching for a while should be enough, right? Was she addicted to watching? If she was addicted to watching, why didn't she know how to use her hands? What was the use of just watching without any tricks? You're not going to come up and touch me? He suddenly opened his eyes, staring at her with a teasing gaze. Fengjiu chuckled and poked her head out. Her eyes sparkled as she looked at him and said, "Didn't you carry me back? I thought that I should repay you, so I came over." Hearing this, he raised his eyebrows and a dark light flashed in his eyes. "Repay me? How are you going to repay me?" Although his tone was steady, it was difficult to conceal the fluctuations in his voice. "I'll wait for you on the bed." As she spoke, she turned and left. Xianyuan Mo's heart instantly heated up when he heard those seductive words. Even his lower abdomen faintly surged with an impulse, and his breathing became slightly rough because of it. This woman's guts have grown big. He took a deep breath and slowly exhaled, calming the impulse and fire in his heart. He couldn't help but imagine the scene that was about to unfold. Thinking of the sexy and hot scene that he couldn't refuse, his ears couldn't help but turn slightly red. He could feel the heat in his ears. He rubbed his red and hot ears, then scooped up a handful of water and patted his thumping heart. He felt that the corners of his lips had unconsciously revealed an expectant smile. His face stiffened, and he shyly tightened his face, trying to maintain his usual appearance. No, he was a bit colder than usual. He eased up a step, then stood up from the water with a splash. After wiping the water off his body, he put on his bathrobe and tied the belt, then walked into the room. Chapter 1338. When he walked out, Fengjiu's eyes moved and a look of admiration flashed in her eyes. A handsome man coming out of the bath was just like this. She saw that his naked body was only covered by a loose bathrobe. The belt of the bathrobe was tied around the waist, perfectly covering his body to prevent it from leaking out. His lower body only revealed his strong and slender calves. Looking at the slightly curly leg hair on his calves, she blinked her eyes and moved up again. Her gaze fell on his upper body that faintly revealed his 8-pack abs. Sparkling and translucent water dripped down from his hair and onto his chest, making him look even more attractive than delicious food. Looking up, his rolling throat, firm chin, slightly pursed sexy thin lips, handsome and outstanding face, and bottomless black eyes all exuded the masculine charm of a mature man. "Come, over here." She sat on the bed and patted the spot on the bed beside her, indicating for him to come over. Seeing this, a certain proud and shy man glanced at her. Suppressing the anticipation in his heart, he looked away with red ears and coughed softly. A low and hoarse voice came out of his mouth. This doesn't seem good. Although he wanted to, it was indeed not good for her. After all, they were not married yet. "No, come." She smiled and narrowed her eyes. "Hurry up, don't dawdle." Hearing this, he glanced at her. Are you serious? Of course, do you think I'm teasing you? She raised her eyebrows, and a smirk appeared on her lips. But, he frowned and said with anticipation and nervousness, it's my first time and I don't have much experience. I'm worried that you won't be satisfied. It's okay, I'll make you satisfied. She resisted the urge to laugh and hooked her finger at him. Hearing this, even his face turned red. Only then did he walk forward stiffly, because he was too nervous and expectant. Even his mind was dizzy. He did not dare to believe the scene in front of him, until he sat down beside her with a stiff body. For a moment, he did not know what to do. Lie down on the bed. She stood up and gestured. Seeing this, he didn't ask any more questions. He lay down on the bed with his back facing her. He was puzzled. What was she doing? Thus, he tilted his head slightly to look at her. He saw her climb onto the bed and sit on his arm. He felt her weight pressing down on him and her soft body. He felt his blood rush to his head, and he quickly lay back on the pillow and closed his eyes. However, he opened them the next moment because he found that his senses were more sensitive after he closed his eyes, and his mind couldn't stop moving. Fine. This was the nature of men. Even if it was him, in front of the woman he loved, he could not resist her waves of temptation and teasing. He felt that it was good enough that he did not have a nosebleed. Fengjiu glanced at him and reached out to untie the belt of the bathrobe around his waist with a faint smile. With this tug, the bathrobe was untied, and he felt the person beneath him stiffen even more. He couldn't help but laugh inwardly. First time? Yes. She believed that the degree of his innocence was already incomparable to that of ordinary people. Also, this guy was a bit of a clean freak. She remembered that when she accidentally kissed him in Jufulin, he was so scared that he fainted. Relax. Look, your entire body is stiff. It's as hard as a rock. She patted his back and then took off half of his bathrobe, revealing his well-defined and strong back. Chapter 1339. Handsome men were indeed pleasing to the eye. She swallowed her saliva and felt her eyes sparkle. Let me help you dry your hair first. As she said this, she took a towel from the head of the bed and wrapped his wet hair in it. She used a bit of spiritual power in her hands to rub it. After a while, the water was dry. She watched as his black hair slid down like silk in her hands. It was soft and mesmerizing like black silk. She played with it for a while, then pulled his black hair to the side. She rubbed her hands with a bit of 100-flower essential oil and moved her muscles. She laughed and said, Then I'm going to start. As soon as she said this, she placed her hands on his shoulders. Her strength gradually increased as she slowly massaged his shoulders. And Xin Yuan Mo's couldn't help but let out a comfortable groan. He felt her soft hands on his shoulders, and his stiff shoulders relaxed. He closed his eyes comfortably. Comfortable, right? She smiled with her eyes narrowed. Her hands pressed down from his shoulders to both sides. Then she placed his hands that were holding the pillow by his side and pressed down from his shoulders to his wrists. Comfortable, he replied with his eyes narrowed. His entire body was completely relaxed, and he let her do as she pleased. Comfortable is good. After pressing down on his shoulders and hands, she moved her hands to his back and used a special method to press down on the acupuncture points on his back. When her hands went down from his waist to his waist, the originally relaxed Xin Yuan Mo's suddenly quivered. He opened his eyes and turned his head. I don't need to press on this waist, right? He asked. This place was sensitive. For a man, a woman's hands messing around, there was simply like lighting a fire. How can that be? This waist needs to be pressed. She turned around and prepared to continue pressing. This time, she rubbed her hands with a bit of 100-flower essential oil. When she touched his waist, she saw that his body was covered in goosebumps. She couldn't help but laugh out loud. What are you doing? Why are you having goosebumps? It's a bit itchy, he said in a muffled voice. His ears, which had returned to normal due to the comfort and relaxation, turned red again. Itchy? Don't worry. I'll give you something that won't itch. She narrowed her eyes with a sly smile. She covered his arms with the bathrobe, covering his body so that she wouldn't be distracted and her eyes would wander around. She then sat on his waist, hooked his legs with both hands, and pulled him up. Ah! The sudden exclamation almost made Yi and Hui Lang, who were guarding outside the courtyard, rush in. But when they thought about what the two people inside were doing, they could only hold back their footsteps and shout inside. "Master? Are you all right?" "It's okay. Don't make a fuss." Fengjiu's voice came out, and he pulled on his tendons again. All of the charming and dreamy atmosphere was shattered at this moment. The scene that was previously filled with a warm and ambiguous atmosphere was now replaced by sweat on the forehead of Xinyuan Mose, who was groaning on the bed due to the strain. It hurt, it really hurt too much. When she pulled on his legs, the tendons in his legs seemed to be stretched, making it impossible for him not to cry out. What's more, her movements were so sudden. This sudden change in style made him stare blankly. After a while, when he heard the giggles behind him, he realized that he had misunderstood again. Chapter 1340. About half an hour later, he lay on the bed and looked at the woman who had jumped off the bed. He took a deep breath and slowly said, "Next time, if you want to massage me, just say it directly." Fengjiu chuckled. "I didn't say anything else. You're the one who's thinking the wrong way." Xinyuan Mose's face was embarrassed. He looked away and didn't look at her again, but he muttered in his heart, "You said it so ambiguously. How could he not think the wrong way? Well, it's getting late. I have to go back and rest." She smiled and walked out, saying, "If it weren't for the fact that you carried me back, I wouldn't have massaged you. Your body is as hard as a rock. My hands are sore from massaging you." Opening the door, she saw Hui Lang and Yi standing outside the room. When they saw her come out, they quickly stepped back. She glanced at the two and asked, "What have you two been whispering about?" "Hee, nothing. We're just curious. What are you doing inside?" Hui Lang smiled, but couldn't help but ask. Fengjiu hooked up the corners of her mouth, revealing a sly smile. She lowered her voice and said, "Your master is inside. You'll know when you go in." Saying this, she walked past the two into the room. Seeing her go back to her room, Hui Lang glanced at his master's room. He was curious and wanted to take a step forward, but was stopped by Yi. "You really want to go in?" Yi glanced at him. "Ghost Doctor is tricking you. How many times have you been tricked by her? Why can't you learn to be smarter?" "It seems that the two of them aren't doing that, so I'll go in and see my master," Hui Lang said matter-of-factly. He poked his head inside and called out, "Master, Master, get out." A loud shout rang out, accompanied by a wave of pressure. The two of them were startled and quickly retreated. Hui Lang scratched his head and said with some doubt, "Could it be that my master has been suppressed for too long? You see, his temper isn't very good. It's a bit like that. What's it like?" Yi walked out, ignoring him. If he was with Hui Lang, he would be unlucky as well. It was better to keep a distance. Xinyuan Mose, who was in the room, originally thought that he wouldn't be able to sleep. Who knew that after being massaged by Fengjiu, his whole body felt very comfortable, especially his muscles and bones. Sleepiness came over him, and he fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, Yang Yong personally brought breakfast to the main courtyard and placed it in the middle of the courtyard. He also had the servants add a few side dishes. He looked at the two people on a big tree in the main courtyard. Yi crossed her arms and hugged her sword. She seemed to be sleeping, while Hui Lang was leaning against a tree trunk and snoring. Seeing this, he looked at Yi. "Did Master and the others sleep very late last night?" "I'm not too sure." Yi shook her head and said, "Ghost Doctor went back to her room early. As for Master, he didn't call us in, so I don't know." Hearing this, Yang Yong's expression changed slightly. He opened his mouth to say something, but saw the door open. Xinyuan Mose, dressed in a black robe, walked out. "Is something the matter?" He looked at Yang Yong and asked, then glanced at the food on the table. Chapter 1341. Tell that to Fengjiu. He walked out, preparing to go to the bamboo forest to practice his swordsmanship. Seeing this, Yang Yong could only agree. He watched as Ying Yi left with his master. Hui Lang was still sleeping in the tree, while he stayed in the courtyard to wait for Fengjiu to wake up. After half an hour, Fengjiu also woke up. She washed up and went out. She saw Yang Yong outside the courtyard. "Housekeeper, why are you here?" She looked around but did not see Xianyuan Mose. She asked, "Where is he?" Yang Yong bowed, then said, "Master went to the bamboo forest to practice his swordsmanship. I am here to apologize. I am very sorry about yesterday." Fengjiu waved her hand. "Don't mention what happened yesterday. I didn't take it to heart." She walked forward and sat down at the stone table. Looking at the breakfast on the table, she raised her eyebrows. "You prepared this?" "Yes." He smiled and nodded. "It looks good." She propped up her chin with one hand. "Ghost Doctor can eat first. I will have someone send another set to Master later." And she did not wait for Xianyuan Mose, because she knew that he usually took around 2 hours to practice his swordsmanship. She ate first, and only asked Yang Yong to send a hot one over later. Yang Yong did not leave, but stayed in the courtyard. He sat at the table and looked at her, asking, "Ghost Doctor is leaving tomorrow? Do you need me to send someone to escort you?" "No need." She waved her hand. "I can travel by myself." She wiped the corners of her mouth and said, "In the future, when I am not by his side, just take care of him a little more." "Yes, Ghost Doctor, don't worry, we will." When Xianyuan Mose returned, he saw the two of them chatting in the courtyard. When he saw this, his gaze shifted slightly, and he walked in. Seeing Xianyuan Mose return, Yang Yong stood up. "Master." Xianyuan Mose glanced at Yang Yong. "Is there nothing to do outside?" Yang Yong stared blankly for a moment, then smiled and said, "Yes, I just remembered that there are still some things that I have yet to take care of." "Master, Ghost Doctor, you two continue chatting. I'll take my leave first." After saying that, he left. After he left, Fengjiu smiled and said, "The breakfast that Yang Yong sent over is not bad. When I ate it earlier, it was just warm. But I knew you wouldn't be back so early, so I didn't leave any for you." She looked at his handsome face and said with a smile, "You sit for a while. He will have someone send some hot food over." Just as she said that, she saw him reach out and hold her hand. "What's wrong?" she asked, looking at him who was staring at her hand. "I'm worried about you leaving alone." Over here, there were as many nascent soul cultivators as there were clouds. Although fairy realm cultivators were not everywhere, almost every family had a fairy realm cultivator in charge. If he left her alone outside, how could he not worry? Hearing this, she smiled. "I said you don't have to worry about me. Even if I can't beat them, I will still run. Also, I will be careful and won't cause any trouble." Hearing this, he glanced at her and said bluntly, "Your words are not very trustworthy." Fengjiu was stunned, then laughed softly. All right, you don't have to worry. I can take care of myself." She did not want him to send someone to protect her in the dark. That would make her feel like she was being watched. Chapter 1342. "Zay, you're so nice." She hugged his arm and said with a smile, "You're my woman. If I'm not good to you, who should I be good to?" He smiled and looked at her beside him. His heart was filled with reluctance and worry. A cry of surprise was heard. The two turned around and saw that Hui Lang, who had been sleeping on the tree, had accidentally flipped over and fell off the tree, landing on the ground. And he groaned and lay on the ground for a long time before he got up. Feeling that they were looking at him, he raised his head and smiled embarrassedly. "That, I didn't hear. I didn't eavesdrop on your conversation, really." Ying Yi, who was guarding outside the courtyard, rolled his eyes when he heard this. This was simply giving away 300 taels of silver. Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu didn't argue with him about this. They glanced at him and then looked away. Seeing this, Hui Lang hurriedly walked out and patted his chest. "Scare me to death, scared me to death." Ying Yi glanced at him and then silently looked away. Master and the Ghost Doctor were already used to him. Otherwise, this idiot's brain wouldn't be enough. On this day, Xianyuan Mose accompanied Fengjiu. The two cherished their last day together. They didn't have any miscellaneous matters to worry about, and only enjoyed the warmth and solitude of the two. The more they were separated, the more reluctant they were to part. However, time couldn't be held back. Until the next morning, when the sky was still dark, a youth wearing shabby beggar clothes with messy hair and a face full of dust left the residence and headed towards the city gates. And at a high place in the residence, Xianyuan Mose, dressed in a black robe, stood with his hands behind his back as he watched the figure leave, half a month later. On this day, the sky gradually darkened. Fengzhou walked on a small path with a green foxtail in her mouth. She looked around as she walked. During this half a month of traveling on foot, she had traveled to many places. She had also experienced the customs of the various places in the Xianyuan Empire, seen many sceneries, and interacted with many people. In particular, it was too convenient for her to walk around in beggar clothes. No matter who it was, they would avoid her and not take a second look at her. After all, she looked messy and there was nothing to be desired. Therefore, she did not encounter any trouble along the way. Looking ahead, he seemed to see a small town in the distance. He was delighted. If there was a small town, then there would be hot food to eat. Immediately, he walked forward quickly. If being a beggar was safe and inconspicuous, then eating was a troublesome matter, because no restaurant would allow a beggar to enter and disturb the guests. Thinking that there was food to eat ahead, her footsteps became lighter and lighter. Not long after, she arrived at the small town. However, when she saw the empty small town, she could not help but be startled. Why is it different from what I imagined? She muttered softly as she walked inside. Her heart was on high alert. How could there be no one in a small town? This place looked like an ordinary village town, and there were grains planted around the road. Looking at those delightful grains, she felt that this place did not look like it was empty. Therefore, she walked in while shouting, "Is there anyone?" "There's." That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.